Sure. Councilwoman Bailey? Here. Councilman Ross?
Here.
Councilwoman Avila?
Here.
Councilwoman Fairclough Staggers?
Here.
Vice Mayor Guzman?
Here.
Mayor Losner?
Here. Thank you. First on the agenda is a discussion regarding, and it's shown on the agenda as downtown Hastings, appropriately referenced as discussion regarding the Southwest Master Plan, specifically in relation to an application that came before us for approval, I guess at the May meeting? April meeting. Somewhat touching upon the recent discussions we had regarding changing model types with the Minority Builders Coalition proposal. So, is this you, Mr. Manager, or Mr. Cordino? Mr. Cordino. All right. I'll pass that back.
All right, we don't have a presentation, but so I thought we'd get started just by kind of giving a brief overview of kind of some of the history that we've got here, and then really I think we just open it up for conversation. So I think the Southwest, well, this is a planned urban neighborhood district, and there are a handful of those. This is the Southwest planned urban neighborhood. So these are special sections of the code that are, I guess, outside of the regular zoning code in their own little district. And inside the urban neighborhood plan, it's like a little mini code. It's got, if you've got the ordinance in front of you, these are master plans in the first place. So we get the master plan in our paperwork. Yeah, at the back of the paperwork, we have the master plan. And so this, if you just take a look at this, it's very informative to this whole thing. This is the 2011. I think this was actually done way before 2011 for whatever reason. And so this is the work that informed the actual zoning code. So it kind of describes everything in a more readable fashion for how the things were put together. And then it's codified in what we use in the code of ordinance in the zoning. So this is if you're going to change this, right, you got to go do kind of a cumbersome process. You got to go change the master plan, and then you got to go change this to keep these consistent as you go through. But the only thing we legislate off of or regulate off of is the zoning code, right? And so if you look at this thing, let's get down to this. Nobody ever liked this section of code. And when we were first introduced to it, it was a development, the 7-Eleven development. What was that street? It's now not 7-Eleven. Lucy and U.S. And it's a dental office. Yeah. And they fought like heck to get that building built as a 7-Eleven. And it came in, and this code kind of pushes the buildings to the front of the street and puts the parking in the rear. I guess that's the main physical difference, and that's kind of a new urbanist thing to put the parking in the back, not the front. They came in and they wanted to do their development because they didn't want to develop in this code. They had 11 variances, right? And so, of course, there was no hardship. They just didn't want to do it, and we would get people on the day say, "Hey, I want you to approve it. We can't approve it. It's not a hardship. You approve it. You have the ability to do it. There's no hardship. It's against the code. It's just we put issues enough." So it seems like this has got to be as close to true as possible, but almost every applicant that's come through the system has not wanted to develop to the zoning code. They wanted they wanted the old type of development where the parking is in front or whichever. And so almost every time somebody comes through, there's a slew of variances, for which we end up recommending denial, which typically get approved by the council. And I think a few years ago, said, look, at this point, this thing doesn't work. I mean, it's constantly being regulated through variance. We ought to consider changing, maybe just adopting whatever is in the regular code for this neighborhood or finding out what it was before and going back to it, because this doesn't seem to work. Nobody wants to develop it here. From just a very high level, it's got things in it that are troublesome that people run into. Again, it's got different areas different zoning sub-areas: traditional single-family neighborhood, traditional multifamily neighborhood, neighborhood mixed use, downtown mixed use, commercial, industrial, civic, government, and parks and open space. Again, the setbacks are such where they push the buildings to the front. For instance, this traditional single-family neighborhood wants the building to be at least, wants to be 10 feet from the road, right? Or at most 20 feet from the road. And there are certain sections that want the building 5 feet from the road. And this is the neighborhood mixed use section, 5 feet from the road. Of course, there's no outdoor storage in Homestead, even though all there is outdoor storage. The code now says you have to be behind walls and under a roof. We don't allow chain link fences in this section, is that right? This is the section where it's industrial, right? And so we've asked, now this code says that you can't put up a chain link fence, you either got to put up a masonry wall or iron pickets covered with landscape. You figure it out.
I'm sorry, John, you have coded chain link fence. Painted, stained, or pressure-treated wood pickets, plastic coated chain link, or wrought iron garden walls shall be made of long and or stone.
Okay. And so it always seems a little bit troublesome to us to have iron pickets, then cover expensive iron pickets with landscaping just to park your semi-trailer or whatever you're going to do in the industrial. So I think this code was meant to, in a sense, here's what it says: encourage compact mixed-use development comprised of residential and non-residential uses. Broaden it, better words here. It says variances are not encouraged. It wants to promote the redevelopment of the Southwest neighborhood by considering this mix of uses to guide that redevelopment. I almost think it wants to gentrify the neighborhood and redevelop it in a totally different way, right? And it doesn't envision the neighborhood in the future to be as industrial as, say, the neighborhood of the past. And that's always been troublesome because no developer has thought about developing as a different type of neighborhood. So that's kind of the code in a nutshell from a historic perspective. We've got the sub-area map that's up on the screen now. We've got a vacant land map with you see that in front of you, but it's the teal areas on there, the vacant land. There's a significant amount of vacant land. It looks like about half of the land is vacant in the area, which is which is an opportunity for some. And then I think if you have any specific questions, the master plan is very graphic in its orientation. So if you thumb through that, you can kind of see what they're aiming at with sidewalks and live planting strips, well landscaped, on-street parking. It's kind of pictures to try to show you what people were thinking about. Again, but it's never materialized, and nobody's ever come in and willingly wanted it to materialize. It never applied to the code as the code states. So if you have any questions.
And so just to add, the original master plan, if the graphic that's up on the screen, is also included in the packets that were distributed.
Yeah, it's the last
so you noted industrial. The original master plan actually struck out industrial as a permitted use.
Yeah.
And years later, it was written back in.
Yeah, let me, if I could, just to add a little context to what Joe was talking about historically. So, circa 1990-91 is when the Southwest Neighborhood Plan was finally adopted by the city. And before my tenure, it was a plan, a futuristic plan at the time that was modeled off of the trend that was heading toward form-based codes. And from my own personal opinion, I think what happened was that when the consultants who were hired to do this plan were doing it, they were not really on the ground truthing to see what was on the ground with relation to the uses and the realistic approach to transitioning from something that's on the ground existing to this. And so, like Michelle said, that the original plan had left out industrial. Well, there was a significant portion of uses that were industrial or heavy commercial that were made non-conforming, right? And I can recall one of the very first changes that I did when I came on board some 18 years ago was going in and modifying and changing and putting the industrial back because that was guided by Blakely Oil. They were made non-conforming, and they wanted to do some further modifications, further growth, if you will, to their existing facility, and they weren't able to because they were made non-conforming. And if you're non-conforming, you get to maintain your status quo, but you don't get to enlarge the facility. So we made those changes. We cleaned up a few things. Around that time also, maybe a couple of years later, there were some targeted changes that we had gone in and done. There were some changes that were done for the funeral home, I think, a few minor things here and there. One of the changes that we did was that there was case law that came out under federal law that stipulates that wherever you allow a place of public assembly, whether that be an Elks Lodge or fraternal organization or a movie theater, you also have to allow for a place of worship. So they have to be on par. And so I had to go in and make those changes. So everywhere that we allowed for a place of public assembly, we also have to allow for a place of worship. So those modifications and changes were done. The last time that I touched this, or that we touched it, was with regards to the Homestead Station. We went in and we created a additional overlay area called the multimodal transportation. You all might remember that. And as Joe was saying, it's sort of like a domino effect, right? Because there's this master plan that is adopted by ordinance that we have to modify and change. Then there's also provisions in the comprehensive plan that aren't as detailed as this. And then there is the actual code, which there are general criteria for a planned urban neighborhood, and it was envisioned at the time that, okay, we have a planned urban neighborhood, but we may have different urban neighborhoods. The Southwest urban neighborhood, at one point we were looking at the Northwest neighborhood. There was a Northwest neighborhood master plan. There were some changes that came out of that, out of the moratorium. But since the Southwest neighborhood was established, there has not been another planned urban neighborhood in the city. So the way that your code is structured now is you have the planned urban neighborhood, and you have general criteria that apply to every planned urban neighborhood, and then it breaks it down more specifically to the Southwest neighborhood, and then specific sub-areas. And then all the sub-areas have their own little regs as to the permitted uses and the types of building, the form of the building, the location, those types of things. So I just think that's important to help provide some context on this as well.
That's one question. Sure. So are the other planned urban neighborhoods, I'm assuming the Northwest might be the closest, where there are commercial and other pieces that fit in? What separates the Southwest when you're talking about it breaking off into there? What separates that? What are some of the things that makes it more difficult to do in the Southwest than it is, let's say, in another?
Well, first, because of the Southwest having this overlay, this is sort of like the mini zoning district for it, right? And so what might be commercial sub-area or neighborhood mixed use here doesn't exactly line up with your traditional zoning district regulations. They're a little different, right? Because this is forcing you to conform and be uniform in application for this whole 300 some odd acres. It's supposed to be a uniform plan. And so it was never contemplated that you would look at things, I mean, you would look at individual properties, but it was more of in a uniform context. Now, you've accomplished that, or you've tried to accomplish that through adopting design guidelines for various corridors throughout the city, as well as commercial design regulations, separate and apart from that for uniformity. Those delve in a little bit to architectural style and detail, but more of building articulation, right? And that was only done maybe 2 years ago, I believe. I think that was on the heels of, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that was on the heels of one of the, I think, 7-Eleven that we may have had come in, and we went back and forth with them and finally got them to give us one of the models, right? Because all of these big companies, they have different models, right? And so we got them to give us a better design. And based on that, the direction was, okay, we want to adopt some more stringent commercial industrial design guidelines, so we don't have to have this back and forth with applicants. They know what they have to do. Here it is in black and white in the code. There's nothing nebulous or discretionary or broad about it. You either meet it or you don't meet it. Here it is, right? So we did that. So I think in the other areas of the city, right, you have those guidelines that have been adopted. But as Joe said, this has always been a situation where you're just now starting to see some residential development. We've had development in here that's been commercial in nature or industrial in nature, but it's only been in the last, I think, 2 to 3 years that you've started to really see people coming in to develop a mixed-use aspect or some infill development with some residential.
So when we're talking about issues for developers coming in, one of the main things that I hear is parking in the rear, but I don't see that as being how does that cause such a problem for them? Sure.
Do we want to ask the developer in the room?
You certainly can. I do want to caution that we can't get into the specifics about a particular application that is currently in quasi, but certainly some of the issues that the developer has concerned about, or staff has repeatedly been addressed with, we can talk about. So certainly.
So parking in the rear, what are some other of the most common issues that you see?
Well, they don't like the setbacks, the setbacks being pushed so close to the street with parking in the rear. I'm not sure which one they dislike more. They don't like the fencing standards. They don't like the fact that you have to be behind walls and under a roof. Those are generally the concerns that we get. I mean, that we get a lot of concern with paving parking lots, right, Michelle? And people want to park on unimproved lots, and we require them to be paved, and there's a lack of interest in paving the lot.
Now, the under roof, undercover for commercial, industrial, that is what your normal commercial, industrial requires too. So there's not anything different with respect to that requirement in this, as opposed to what you currently require outside of here.
So for fencing, what's different with the requirements in the Southwest to other commercial? We don't allow chain link or any other type of fences anywhere else? It's so specific with that it's iron bars and the landscaping?
Well, here it seems to be we get more complaints about it than anywhere else in the city. So is this, Michelle, is this vastly different than the other place? The landscaping and iron pickets are unique to Southwest, I think.
Yeah, each district has its own set of regulations. So earlier, when I read the regulations, those were specific to commercial. Single family doesn't allow chain link, and
I think one of the areas that we always have applicants stumbling on is the architecture.
That part that piece I understand.
Things of that nature. So I think that's one of them that they question. We don't have that in any other places.
Right.
What does it require, David?
Floridian.
Floridian with grid. Yeah.
U.S. architecture.
Which I like, but.
Which was the trend for a while, I mean, in some places it still is a trend.
Yeah,
But that,
Oasis is like that.
that's the overall sort of theme, architectural direction that this leads you to.
You can sort of see from the original design concept, everything's pulled out, all the parking and everywhere that you look on that map is behind the building.
To promote more pedestrian friendly, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that a bigger issue is the architectural requirements? I mean, either you're gonna put a parking lot in front or a parking lot in the back,
Right.
is, I guess, the perception of the added expense of the mandated architecture.
People complain about the architecture all that much? I mean, I don't know.
People get confused about the architecture. While the code cites Peruvian, Bahamian, and Key Western style, it's not really clearly defined. So there's a lot of interpretation for the applicant's team. Now, that could be a good thing, because there's more flexibility, but then you're still pigeonholed in these three design concepts.
And would that issue be as to stymieing residential or commercial or both?
It's master plan wide. Master plan wide.
James, if we wanted to change this overlay, can we amend this overlay, or were you suggesting for us to consider just going back to the original plan before we implemented the overlay?
So, a couple of things, right? Strategy-wise, option-wise, that you could do. You could decide that you totally want to get rid of this and do something different here, right? Just repeal this, throw it out, and then revert back to whatever was in place before, which I have no idea. This has been in place for 30 years now, so you've got people who, for 30 years, have, made decisions, bought property based on this current plan. Now, my concern is that if you start downzoning, taking away rights, then we have to be conscientious of what that looks like, because that can expose us to certain litigation. But I think before you throw it all out, right, we'd really have to look at it and go back to what this looked like before the adoption of the Southwest Neighborhood Master Plan, and I have no idea. I would assume that it's probably a hodgepodge mix of heavy commercial, industrial in some areas, residential, multifamily. I think it was just a hodgepodge of a lot of things.
Going back to the concept that you made earlier about people that are actually in the neighborhood, like driving through, as opposed to the consultants kind of looking at this from a bird's eye view, there are some areas within this map that just doesn't seem to flow with the neighborhood. Specifically, in my opinion, the large size of the mixed use. So the one question I have is, in some parts of the code, you could do B3 and everything under. It could be B2, B1, whatever.
Like a pyramid.
Does that same concept apply to a mixed use? Can you do things that are under mixed use category?
It's not the full plethora. So, if you look at say, for instance, the commercial sub-area, in the commercial sub-area in the code, it'll specify permitted uses, and so it doesn't allow the full plethora of the heavy industrial type of uses that you would normally get in a more intensive industrial I-1, I-2, I-3, or heavy commercial 3, which includes everything in 2 and 1, because it's like the pyramid scheme, right?
Yeah, our code doesn't say that. In the regular zoning code, if you were to go to, say, B3, it'll say B3 allows everything B1A, B1, and B2, and then B3. This code, this doesn't say that. For instance, in our downtown mixed use, it just lists 10 uses: residential, hotels, professional office, retail, grocery store, community, but it doesn't say everything allowed in traditional mixed use or any of the parallel residential categories.
How do you identify when a property is platted? How do you know?
If we go to Miami-Dade, well, we can pull a couple ways. Go to the property appraiser's office, and there will be a book and page number under the legal description, and so we pull that plat. A lot of properties in Homestead, in the Southwest in particular, are not platted. This is a very old city, over 100 years old, as you all know, and so platting became...
We have plat.
Can I get a brief definition of what platting is?
Yeah, a plat is a legal instrument, right? There's statutory requirements as well as requirements in Miami-Dade County who preempts the city with respect to platting. So our regulations can't be less restrictive. We have to be on par with Miami-Dade County. And there are certain ministerial, you have to have certain lines, certain things on a plat. But it's a legal instrument that's recorded that defines and sets in place the roadways, the lots, the configuration of a new subdivision configuration, or it might be just I have one parcel and I now want to divide that parcel into
2 or 3.
2 or 3 subparcels and create parcel A, parcel B, parcel C, 1, 2, 3. So that's the mechanism by which you can do that. And that is either you fall into the category that you get a waiver where you're able to do a waiver plat, which is less stringent than the full plat, or it kicks you into a plat. And normally we look at those with the site plan, right? Because the site plan needs to match the boundaries of the plat. And so we look at those together because you really can't look at it in a vacuum.
Oh, yeah, a plat is like a survey.
Yeah, it's like a super survey.
Yeah, so like a...
And it'll have on it easements, it'll identify cross-access easements, it'll have notes on it, right? And they'll say, this tract is going to be maintained by HOA, or it'll identify things that say, this tract, maybe the roadway system is, common area identified for the use for the residents of the community or the public. So there are variations of it, but that's, in essence, the legal document that gets recorded that sets out the parameters. Now, keep in mind that the original, some of this property on the east side, I don't know how far back, and Mayor Losner might know, but some of this area on the very west side of Homestead was incorporated from Monroe County. I'm not sure the year that was.
Dade County?
I'm sorry, from Dade County.
From Miami-Dade.
From Miami-Dade County, as well as the east side, like everything east, like by the hospital, all of that. At one point, that was a huge swath of land that came in, annexed in from Miami-Dade County. And this was sort of like jagged tooth, as well as the northern boundary too. So it's not an exact square if you look at it. So some of this property that was developed under Miami-Dade County regulations at some point, sometime. Some of it, not all of it, but some of it.
James, in terms of mixed use, neighborhood mixed use, is there a requirement to have 2 stories?
Let me look it up.
So, Eddie,
I don't think there is.
Basically, it's looking for a multi-use development. It discourages a single use to be developed on the parcel. It's looking for a combination.
So I could build a structure and have a dividing wall. One side could be residential and the other side could be a convenience store or a shop or a coffee shop or, it doesn't necessarily need to be 2 stories. Okay. I didn't know that either.
So each one of these sub areas, right? When you look at it, when you get into the.
What page are you on?
When you get into in your
Up to 5 stories.
in your information, your packet, I'm looking at, for instance, page exhibit. Well, I don't know what page it is. It says it should be on the bottom. 2 of 19, 1 of 19, 2 of 19, which is this. It's after the Southwest Neighborhood Master Plan, this map. Then at the very top of the page, it says Code of Ordinances, and then it says sub areas 30-396-62.
Yeah, no, I have a packet of 26 pages, and then I have the master plan neighborhood.
Are you in the Code of Ordinances?
I'm in the Code of Ordinances, that right
The
there.
bottom has got 1 of 19.
Okay, so if you look at,
I don't have that.
That was in our office.
Oh.
so if you look at, if you look at the sub areas, for instance,
The bottom was
2 of 19,
2 of 19 sub areas.
okay?
What's the very
So I'm just, for example, like if you look at the it says townhouse, right? On 1 of 19, the very bottom of 1 of 19, townhouse, okay? So that's the sub area. Then you go to 2 of 19, right? So under townhouse, it gives you the lot depth, the lot size, the minimums, right? And it talks about the placement. These are where the regulations, the side setbacks, the rear, the lot coverage, those are where those regulations are. Now, with respect to height, I think there's a general provision that talks about height, right?
There is, right?
Yeah.
5 stories or 70.
Yeah. That applies across the board for everything.
Okay.
Okay.
My last one is, we could reduce the minimum size for a development, whether it be single family or a townhouse, whatever it is. That's code. We could reduce that just by giving staff direction.
So, one of the issues that came up in April, when you all were discussing an application, there was some concern and discussion about the minimum size of units, right? And so, the minimum, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but the minimum size of the units was not specifically spelled out here. So then you have to go to the actual code. In our zoning code, there's a section that's the minimum unit size, minimum dwelling unit size. And it gives you the minimum size, and then for every bedroom, you add like so many square feet.
150.
Yeah,
100 square feet per single.
whatever it is. I don't have it in front of me, but it's basically a ratio. And so if that is too small, or you don't think that that is where you want to be, then you totally can change that.
I'm talking about lot size.
Oh, lot
Because
size.
the way stuff was or was not platted, I mean, there's lots that are, 2,000 square feet, or 2,500, 3,000, and the minimum is 75 or 5,000. I think it's 5,000 square feet in the southwest area. There's a lot of lots in there, just by what Demetri said the other day, 47 lots where only 5 are buildable. So what do we do with the rest of them?
So the way that it works is that depending on when the lot was platted, dictates whether or not it was grandfathered in, a legal non-conforming lot. So if it was platted before, I think, 1974, then it's grandfathered in. Now, there's a practical aspect to this, right? You may have a lot that's so small that realistically you just can't put something on it, right? Or if you do, you're going to have to ask for a variance from every aspect because it's going to be so, it'll take up the entire lot. And in those instances, a lot of people will unify, by unity of title, they'll join two small lots to make one buildable lot where they can sell it. But there are lots that were platted that are deemed legally non-conforming lots that are less than the minimum that are required. And the lot sizes in here are smaller than the lot sizes that you would see in other areas of the city.
So to answer the question then, just like you said, we can make bigger or smaller the sizes of the units, we can do the same with lot sizes as well. With regards to what you want to set as the minimum lot size. Correct.
Right. So you can change that. You can vary that.
Okay.
Which, and to your point, I think to a question that Councilwoman Bailey had earlier about what are some of the special issues in the Southwest that would need to be addressed versus the Northwest Master Plan, my first thought went to lot size. The Southwest area was historically platted in smaller lots. And this code, the Southwest Plan, addresses that, where generally in the city you've got to have 7,500 square feet. Here, you can have a minimum of 5,000 square feet, but even down to 3,600 if there is another similar lot in that same block. So if we did a massive overhaul of the Southwest Master Plan, in my mind, clearly, those exceptions would have to be preserved in the code to not have a lot of fragmented, unbuildable lots. And it occurred to me as we were sitting here, and for future discussions, for me, it would be very helpful to identify where these city and CRA-owned lots are on this map. And we may have that, but not identified here. I believe that, we do have some lots that can be aggregated to meet those minimums, and there may be other lots that we picked up over the years and in the post-Andrew days that are just going to be pocket lots.
Yeah, there are, when the Northwest, one of the things that came out of some of the moratorium studies that we did, in particular, we had a Northwest neighborhood moratorium, and then out of that, there were some recommendations with regards to density and with regards to infill lots and how you deal with some of these infill lots. And so those aren't necessarily, I think, problematic so much. We pretty much have figured that out. Occasionally we get a quirky one in, but for the most part, you're dealing with a built environment, and you're dealing with, if there's a smaller lot, and there are smaller lots on the whole block, then that's pretty much a grandfathered lot. You're going to let somebody come in and develop it, provided they are in sync with the rest of everyone. If they have to ask for a variance, we'll look at it, because, they're entitled to a right? You can't prevent them from building on the property, because we can't prevent full economic viability on the property. But what that looks like is a very case-specific, fact-specific analysis that we have to do. So we can talk generally about it, but there are special situations that require us to maybe have to look at it more closely or look at it.
There are some some areas in, like right off of 6th Avenue and 6th Street, where the lot seems to be 25 by 75, very narrow and very long, very similar to what a shotgun house looks like. What you were saying is that if there are vacant lots next door, that they're grandfathered in to develop with the setbacks similar to the neighboring home? Is that what I'm hearing?
In a general sense, yes. I think the Southwest neighborhood was really premised on having small lots. It's really looking for small lots, but some of the design problems that developers have with small lots is trying to figure out driveways and carports and garages, because the Southwest Master Plan doesn't want those fronting on the street. It's really premised on having an alleyway present behind the lots to be able to get in and get out of. And there's a lot of situations in the Southwest neighborhood that don't exist with that right now. There were at one time, but they've been vacated and things of that nature. So it's trying to find out and keep how are you going to deal with the everyday needs of cars on a lot, and not having the garage be the primary elevation of design that you see as you go up and down the street. You're going to end up with situations like we have in some of the townhouse developments where there's really no grass, there's no front yard, it's all driveway. And that's really not what the Southwest Master Plan is really looking for.
Just to add to David's explanation, when the plan was created, the thought was that the developer would come in and buy city blocks or areas of the plan and then develop accordingly to the design constraints that David noted. It was never thought to be a plan that you would develop infill lots with. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the request to develop infill lots which don't fit in with the current master plan.
I see.
That really makes sense. So that explanation makes a lot of sense. It's not someone buying a whole lot and building a house on lot 1 and the west 10 feet of lot 2 to get those.
Right, and this goes back to my original comment about when they created this, you know, whether it was pie in the sky, but there really wasn't ground truthing with respect to the actual physical aspects of the neighborhood and the streetscape and the buildings and the variations that go into the.
You're right. It was a long-term transformational vision, right? And this graphic kind of shows you, right? This doesn't look like what it looks like now. This was, if this were to be built out based on this form, which could take 50 or 100 years, right? It would look like this. This doesn't look at anything like what's on the ground today. So it was really visionary. I mean, it's kind of like a Miami 21-ish type of visionary code where they thought of not in this next 5 years, but in the next 50 years, what the city would look like.
Yeah, and it's also for the height. You know, density is height. It's going up, it's going down. It's really looking for, you know, multi-family to be 3 and 4 stories height, as opposed to one single unit, a townhouse or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is like one of those trends. I mean, it still is a trend. It's like form-based code. The whole thing of bringing back like the old neighborhood. People sitting on the front porch, people on the street, and not their, you know, not, it just be a sea of cars, driveways. I mean, that was the whole, is to create a low-scale neighborhood type of mixed use, segmented in with some commercial, neighborhood commercial, back to the old, like, New York City block kind of.
It was the antithesis of the DRI suburban development.
Yeah.
DRI was brand new 70s era development that was unique in that it was highly suburban, right? No connectivity, no grid streets, one entrance in, one entrance out of each individual pod development. And in a lot of times, the planners would think that that's the worst type of development you can get. That's what really causes the traffic. And that this old 1920s style development would disperse traffic. The grid disperses traffic. This is the way that the planners thought that the quality of life would be better, as opposed to the stuff that was coming in out of the ground in the DRI. And it's just two completely opposite styles of thinking of development. And the good thing is you have them both here in Homestead, which is pretty unique, because not a lot of places have both of those styles of development. So it was an attempt to get away from the stuff that happened east of the turnpike.
I'm listening to three main categories. One is the design issue we have with the Key West, or that whole style. The second is what these colors mean throughout this area. And the third is lot sizes and how we attract people to want to come to infill, because that's what we're seeing right now. So maybe we should segment a little bit and tackle one of those and kind of check it off the list. So if we wanted to start with how do we feel about, the whole Key West style, building, we can have that conversation. Do we like it? Do we not like it? Do we just want it to be open like the other parts of the city?
Sir?
Sorry, your name and address for the record.
My name is Roberto Sur. I am a developer, and the architect can explain more, no? But we identified two more issues. Not just the architectural style, but the density. You can have 5 floors, but only 15 dwellings per acre. It's impossible to get 5 floors.
Good point.
And the second is the size of the unit. In all the cities in Miami, you can have 700 square feet. Here is 1100.
For 3 bedroom.
No, for 1 bedroom.
That's not true.
And then you have to add one. Yeah.
That is 1,000 plus 150 for every additional bedroom.
Yeah.
1 bedroom's 1,000, 2 bedroom would be 1,150.
In Palmetto Bay, you can have 700.
700 versus 1,000.
And that's more important to have developed the area, because you have the same density in the main street than in the small street. But the architect can explain. Can you explain about the density and the development of the area?
Well, he has a very good point that, always density has to do with setbacks, height, limitations, and so on and so forth, So when you have a building that can be up to 5 stories in height, the density should be higher, 34 units per acre, versus, when you have only like 12 units per acre or 15 units per acre, and you can accomplish that in 2 stories, maybe 3 stories. So there's a disparity there as to why so high, yet the density is so low. And not only that, but, I've been working a lot of in Dade County, all over Dade County, and other counties also, and the tendency, and I'm sure that you told by Dade County, is that, everybody's increasing the density. Little Havana, Corral area, whatever, the densities are higher, basically, it's great for, tax revenue, for safety, for, transportation, you have a lot of, activities going on in an area, in a neighborhood, you're least likely to have to take a car, or buy a car, whatever, to go downtown to work, if you work in the area. So there's a lot of advantages in increasing the density. That's one thing, that I've noticed, in the project I'm working on, first read it, and I saw, to find stores, but then, when I saw the density, I think there's no need to walk behind.
Great, thanks, good points. I think we've been trying to revitalize downtown for a long time. And part of the reason that I think the east side is doing so well is because there's been so much development on the east side, and there's a lot of consumers over there. So it makes it very attractive for people in commerce to want to have, business in that area. So a lot of times when you talk to developers and you ask them if you want to come over to develop on the west side, they look at the demographics and it just doesn't make sense to them because the densities aren't there. So I think density, if we were going to put it somewhere, which we had a workshop about this before.
So the lines fall here?
It's in that area. It's in that general area. So that's a conversation, taking some of the points that they've made today, that once we do get closer to finalizing that map and what we consider to be the final number for density per acre, you know, it's taken into consideration what these developers are telling us because they are here on the ground. Now, obviously, to the mayor's point, we want to really be careful and not create something where it starts to have, you start to have a bunch of efficiencies, you know, in a place where you're not adding value to the area, you're devaluing the area. Because having those small places, you consider it, you know, in some other urban places where they're amenitized type of developments where whoever lives there doesn't have to go anywhere because they could go up to, you know, the 10th floor, yeah, they can go to the gym, they have a rooftop, they have restaurant downstairs. So we want to be careful and not to create an area where we're devaluing the area instead of adding value because of what has been created and what's there now.
But, you know, right now, the little smaller units, you know, that are kind of efficiencies or whatever, downtown Miami, you know, in different places, you know, where you have like 350, 400 square feet units. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but what is happening is that, you know, the prices of real estate now is extremely high, and it keeps on going higher and higher and higher. So you have this professional, you know, young graduates, you know, that they're starting their life, you know, they have a big student loan and stuff like that, and then they want to start. And where do they go? They live in their parents' house because they can't afford to go someplace else. So now they're looking into these smaller units.
Micro units, right?
Micro units, like going into that are beautiful buildings, beautiful units, you know, whatever. And it's just enough for them to, you know, right after graduation, to move in by themselves, or, you know, with you know, maybe, you know, wife or whatever it may be. You know, they haven't really started having kids or anything like that, but they want to start their own thing. You know what I'm saying? And this makes it affordable. And I know that there's kind of like a stigma that when we're talking about efficiencies, that basically it's going to be, you know, you're going to basically make it like a rental thing, you know, out to not homeless people, but, you know, low-income people and people that really can't afford it, so they're going to be living 5 families in one unit and all that. I know that there's a thought behind that, okay? But it's not generally that way. It's not always that way. You know, I think that right now there's a lack of housing in Dade County in South Florida, okay? And how do you make up for that? Well, you increase the density. You know, there's a lot of things that you can place in order to make sure that it's a well-designed, you know, livable community area. You know, like the mayor said, you know, last time, you know, amenities, you know, for the family and so on and so forth. You know, make that be part of the requirements, okay? But like, and I know that we're not going to into our project, you know, but you know, we have to follow the code. The code did not require any of that. But if we wanted to provide all those amenities, you know, the density was not there to be able to, you know, afford it. So that's something that you guys need to really, you know, if you're planning on, you know, maybe looking at this, studying it, amending it, okay, you know, you got it.
I just want to chime in, and I agree, in a perfect world, you're on point. I understand you're new to Homestead. Please understand that historically in Homestead, well, number one, go ask any average voter on the street in Homestead what they think of density of 15 to 20, and they think that's very high, and they equate that to traffic. And we have, like everybody else, serious traffic problems. But historically, that level of density has equated to subsidized housing. We need to grow out of that. We don't have the job centers here. We're a long way from having those job centers here. And the economic demographic that you have in Pinecrest, Coral Gables, and downtown Miami that does not render a high-density project an affordable or subsidized type project does not exist here. So we have to be very careful not to further perpetuate Homestead as Budstead. If you look at the statistics now, the preponderance of residential units in Homestead are subsidized or affordable type units. We cannot build a viable downtown or an above average city with those kinds of demographics. So for that reason, I have to take issue with your advocacy for higher density in and near downtown, because we are just not positioned to absorb or attract an economic demographic that will create a larger benefit with the higher density. Probably going to see we've got a real generational split here among council about that. They're going to have to live with those decisions long after I'm gone. But I just want you to understand that there is a real public feeling against that, even the 15 or 20 density that exists now in the Southwest. That is stretching the limits of tolerance. Councilwoman?
Did we, as a result of the density workshop we had, what part of this is included in those lines we drew?
I believe the edge is chrome. Is it chrome that goes up, and the western edge of the downtown boundary would be chrome, and everything else would not be.
It was
Second half to the west.
Campbell to Second Avenue all the way down to Lucy, almost, right?
Well,
On the west side.
Yeah, so it would run, it would sort of run along the busway, and then also along that Chrome Avenue.
But the downtown definition that we came up with went west to Second Avenue from Lucy to Campbell. And then basically the CRA, which goes over to US 1, and then that little trailer park area down around the water treatment plant.
I've got it memorized.
Yeah, which is different from.
So that mixed-use area, that mixed-use brown area here is not part of our density diagram. This part.
Hold on, I'm trying to pull up my map that I made. I think it is.
Yes.
It is?
I think it is.
Yes, but it would be on the east side of Second Avenue.
So this little triangle piece, right?
No. Yes, the triangle piece.
Okay. And so that one would have, what was the density we all agreed on?
We were talking up to 30
For that part, which would affect the neighborhood mixed use.
for the whole thing, for all.
Right, but with regards to this map here, the Southwest map.
But we haven't finalized that. We haven't given it the final stamp.
Got it, okay, well.
Yeah, I
Not even close.
Okay, so did that answer question number one about the
The design issue?
design? You like the Key West.
I don't mind it, I don't like being pigeonholed to just that. I think that we could be more flexible, but I wanna, what do you think?
I think there are some nice features. I think that if we are going to talk architecture, I don't want to make it too strict either. You know, sometimes developers come with some great ideas. And I would also like to get the community involved as much as possible. If we're going to have an architectural workshop, you know, get the residents to come in, that they felt like they had a big part in what was decided. And you know, maybe there can be certain ones that we say are discouraged, others that are encouraged, but not that it's going to be another closed door when somebody's looking at at developing something.
Ms. Lopez made a good point earlier that there is a degree of vagueness in the definition of what's there now, and I'm all for adding to what's permitted, but I know good and well if we throw out the standards, we're gonna get standard little boxes.
And that's what we definitely want to stay away from, because if you drive through the southwest section, near where that little triangle piece is, you see boxes with flat roofs, with 3 doors. And that's what we want to try to enhance, you know, so whoever comes to develop something similar to that, all of a sudden you've got, you know, gable roofs, tile roofs, and you've got some, you know, you add some spice to it. Shotgun style homes are back in vogue. If you look at some of the mini houses that are now being marketed in other areas, to me, they're evocative of that style. Now,
I have them in Coral Gables, but across the street from me, shotgun.
And while they, you know, the word shotgun has a very negative connotation from some history here, if we could come up, you know, call it Florida vernacular, something, to incorporate those types of, you know, additional architecture, but you're right, Vice Mayor, to safeguard against boxes. Right.
But do you think it's too prescriptive, though, the Bahamian style? Because although it still says Bahamian, Key West style, that's very specific. So I don't know how you can deviate from that. I don't think it should be open-ended to both of your points. Absolutely not. But that is very specific.
Please, perhaps expand the styles.
Mr. Corodino, do you have any idea how they do it in South Miami when it comes to design standards? Because sometimes I like to piggyback off of cities that I think that might be doing it right. And then if they're too extensive in what they're asking for, we can scale down. Maybe you...
A lot of times with South Miami, they have a pretty sophisticated code that they put together to kind of regulate this, and you probably wouldn't like it. It's probably a little bit more prescriptive or complicated than this one. But, you know, I think what these guys were trying to do is get away from the box, right? And so they went and named architectural styles. I mean, David would know best, but maybe we encourage things. When we were working with Lennar on one of these things, we were encouraging shutters or articulated building fronts or, you know, different pieces of the building facade that they could get. And, you know, because they were more than willing to build just a flat rectangle, right? Maybe we can incorporate those types of things in there that evoke some type of architectural standards, but aren't so prescriptive that they name a style. Key West style. I mean, the way I look at this, I do think, right, it's vague, it's Key West, it's Bahamian, it's something like that. So it's some Caribbean kind of...
It gives you some outline, right? I mean, it's a battle in many municipalities. And I would tell you that in this past legislative session, there was a bill that came out that basically preempted local governments from regulating architectural styles for single-family homes. And it had a number of exceptions, and one of the exceptions is that unless you're part of a planned urban development or a PUD, then you have the ability, because it's a uniform. But someone just coming in to build a single-family home, we don't have architectural standards in place now, but even if we wanted to adopt it at this point, as long as it fell outside of the exception, we wouldn't be able to.
I guess what we're looking for is a mechanism to stay away from the box.
Yeah. So I think you leave in place what you have, and then maybe we come up with something, in addition to what's there, that provides a little bit more fluidity and flexibility with respect to the architectural style for the Southwest. I don't know what that is today,
So something like leaving the current descriptions, but then saying to either add shutters or some other distinction on the building that just square rectangles would not be permitted. Something along those lines?
I think that's one of the failings of the Southwest Master Plan. They have some stuff in there, but they didn't do a good job of really graphically depicting what that could be. And I think that's an easy fix, really, with things like these.
Like different building articulation, different building, like facade treatments that get that big character, those types of things. So,
Many cities do have graphic illustrations in their codes, and I know this is way out of hand from what we're talking about. I believe Coral Gables does.
That's what
They
this
have
was.
an illustration of, but that is, but it's very limiting.
Right.
Are we on the same page,
Hello?
Mr. Russ?
Hey, I just got a couple of thoughts while I'm sitting here. I hope you can hear me okay. I mean, we're going back and forth with different design tactics and no flat buildings and all this and that, but we don't know exactly as a group what we want the Southwest section to look like. And before we can figure out what kind of house we want out there, or multifamily, or the zoning, or the density, we got to have a plan of action. What is it we want to see there? Do we want to put residential properties along Chrome Avenue? Do we want to make the zoning and the property rights available for people who can come in? They could buy up blocks of the area and then put housing and density in there. What is the goal of all of this? Because I think James mentioned that this Southwest Master Plan was put in place 25, 30 years ago, and it was a 50-year plan. Well, there's 20 years left of this plan, and ain't nothing been built out there yet. So we have to plan for the future. Our lives are short here. We're only going to be, elected officials for a certain amount of time, but we got to put the plan in place that the city will benefit from. I mean, Julio, you brought up a good point where you said they put housing and they put all this stuff on the east side of the highway, and look what came out from that. You've got businesses, you've got restaurants, you've got retail establishments. Mayor, I know you know back in the day, prior to Hurricane Andrew and after Hurricane Andrew, we couldn't even buy clothing in this town. We had to go to Cutler Ridge Mall to get clothing. So now we've got that vibrant activity. Yes, there's going to be people who say, no, we don't want density in the city anymore, and I agree with that too. Do we want to preserve the historic value of the downtown area? Do we want to unleash development a block away from downtown Homestead and totally revitalize the Chrome Avenue area when Losner Park opens up? We've got the parking garage there. So I know I'm spewing out a lot of things, but we don't have, I don't hear in this hour and 10-minute discussion anything of what we really want there, except for we don't want box style houses. So do we want more density? Do we want to bring life into the downtown area? Are we revitalizing something that can't be revitalized? I mean, those are all questions that I think we need to answer before we can go into the architectural control portions of it, the specifics on fencing. Do you want to park a car in front of a house, behind a house? Do you want to allow for 10 houses only, or do you want to allow for 30 units out there? There's a whole lot of questions to be asked, and I just don't. The Southwest Master Plan has been gone over many times, and nothing has come from it. So, and I think part of the reason is we don't have a real plan. We don't know exactly what we want there. We're going to have 7 different ideas and 7 different thoughts, and I just think we need to get that before we can go and start changing all these things and try to attract a developer. I think the gentleman who spoke earlier, you may be new to the area, but there's vision there. And I agree with the mayor that, there's a lot of people that don't want the density, but, those people won't be around forever either. But we got to think of what's best for the city of Homestead. So I'll leave that remark there and continue to listen to the conversation. But I think until we as a group decide exactly what it is we want in the Southwest area, we've already got some issues with the industrial portions of it. But there hasn't been a building erected in that area in over 25 years. So I think we can take some steps to make that happen now. Mayor, hey, I appreciate and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councilman. I think to your point, I think we all recognize or in agreement, the Southwest Master Plan as it currently exists discourages investment, discourages people coming in and buying up entire blocks for redevelopment. So I think the conversation here is, what can we do quickly to maintain integrity in that neighborhood, but to lessen the suppression on investment and development that we have within the community standards of density and appearance, whatever they may be. You know, just looking at, the overheads of the Southwest neighborhood, there has been recent investment in substantial chunks of property. And we need to reach out to those folks who own blocks or a half a block or 3/4 of a block and see what the delay is. What can we do to encourage them to move forward? Or, it's interesting, properties are changing hands very quickly all over the place. And maybe it's not happening there because of this plan. And if we can expand architectural choices and do some tweaking here, and I agree there's bigger picture things that need to be done with this plan. But I think we've done a good job of identifying what we need to address as a priority to encourage folks to come in and do things. I mean, we had a group that, put their money where their mouth was and came in and brought a product in that met the code, the current code. So we've got one group willing to do that. There's probably 20 that would be stepping forward with some.
But then none of us liked what was presented. So I think even though there might be contractors and developers willing to provide what fits the code, we all were like, who gave you this idea? And it's this.
True.
So, I mean, starting with what Councilman Ross mentioned, I'd like to maybe start our focus, and thank you everyone for the summarizing and the, definitions. It gave us a good foundation. A lot of the things that you brought up, Vice Mayor, I think are important for us to maintain as priorities as we move through here. But if we can maybe start with, let's say, the farther east side and work our way west, and let's look at, for example, Chrome Avenue. This plan has, people's front yards facing Chrome Avenue or I guess it was meant to be commercial, but can we add residential to this peach color area here? So you have residential above the commercial, so that would be what, mixed use versus here? Right, so right along Chrome Avenue, there's no residential allowed.
Which side?
Because Chrome is.
Both sides.
But it's mixed use, right?
No, it's right now it's zoned commercial.
Because Chrome is intended to be your commercial corridor.
Right, so focusing on downtown.
Commercial doesn't allow.
Commercial allows for mixed use residential.
The application might include residential above commercial.
So that's already allowed. So, but is that part of your suggestion that it's not really specific as to what is allowed under, the BU? Is that confusing?
Yeah, it allows residential, and it allows uses permitted by neighborhood and downtown mixed-use sub-areas. So it does all those things in those other two zones if they want it to. So it doesn't preclude mixed use.
So then the challenge that I'm hearing from the developers is the density on that particular case. And in general, so to go up to the 5 stories, it's cost prohibitive if you can only do 15 units, 10 to 15 units. You'd end up doing it in 2 stories.
We may have a difference of opinion on density, but I feel the only way we get downtown the way we want to see it is we maximize density. What does maximize mean to me? Different to you. But I know that the only way that starts to thrive is if we maximize density in downtown. The closest area to our downtown corridor, that's where I would like to see max density. Mm-hmm. I'm pro density.
So that Chrome Avenue strip with the commercial allows for residential above it up to 5 stories.
It allows for residential, use permitted by neighborhood and downtown mixed-use sub-areas, which are 2 other sub-areas, hotels, retail, restaurants, grocery stores, convenience stores, gas sales permitted, funeral homes, churches, places of worship, uses permitted by the city's B3, B2, B1, and B1A zoning districts, except for prohibited uses listed below. below.
So, hang on. So this pink area right here, all up and down Chrome Avenue, is the commercial sub-area. In the commercial sub-area, it allows for 15 units per acre, and it specifies the building type, right? Because it's mixed use, so you're not going to have a single-family lot. But you could have a townhome, you could have a condo apartment, allows for mixed use, neighborhood commercial, and...
So explain this to me. What's the difference between commercial and neighborhood mixed use if commercial allows mixed use? Why the two different colors and different variations?
Well, this is where it's acting as the pyramid, right? Where you've got the broad commercial use, but underneath it, if you wanted to, you could have those two other uses. So this one is being inclusive, whereas it's not necessarily inclusive in a lot of the other sections, like it is in the traditional.
So the brown-colored mixed use is not inclusive of what?
Strictly commercial.
So the mix, so you're talking at the brown, which says neighborhood mixed use. So what this says is, what the commercial area says, the peach color, it can be brown, and it can be the red hash color. So it can be uses permitted by neighborhood use and downtown mixed use subareas. So it could be all of those colors. Brown can be included in the peach, but the peach can't be included in the brown.
Also, each sub-area has a purpose that defines what that sub-area is intended for. So, for example, the purpose of the commercial sub-area is intended to allow more conventional suburban commercial development. The areas along US 1 are primarily intended to serve as future locations for big box commercial uses that fit into the current development pattern along US 1, as I previously indicated. Along Chrome Avenue, the permitted building types will continue to promote a pedestrian orientation and development pattern consistent with the downtown mixed-use sub-area. When you look at neighborhood mixed use, the purpose is designed to achieve the greatest flexibility in sub-areas. The building types allowed within the neighborhood mixed-use sub-area are encouraged to be designed and constructed so the first floors will permit easy conversion between residential and commercial uses. This sub-area is generally a transition between the residential sub-areas and the downtown mixed-use industrial and commercial sub-areas.
I wonder what would happen if you took all this and threw it out and said, bring me your best project. You think anybody would come?
Well, I think they want direction. They're not going to waste time and money on putting together something for us to say.
I think if we're trying to clarify and really just get down to a few things that we can do fast, I think regarding residential, we are obviously not touching the single-family neighborhoods. I think those stay obviously as is. It is where we have the options for mixed use that we really want to grow, that we want to have that walkability. I think that is what's going to contribute to a much more successful area. And if we can allow for higher density only in that mixed-use area, let's say, that will entice developers to come. It won't scare, hopefully, the rest of Homestead. And we are getting that commercial component and allowing for the developer to have a successful project.
So would you be okay with adding the from 2nd Street to Lucy Street and from Southwest 6th Avenue east into that diagram we drew for the density?
Off the top of my head, I would say that it would be simpler to stick to the brown area, especially if you look at where the vacant land is. If we want to encourage new development, if we only looked at that mixed-use area and allowed for a little higher density there.
It's right here, that's what you're saying.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I thought you meant to add some of the...
from here to here, and then from here this way. Because this, from here that way, is already part of our diagram, our density diagram. So adding this square.
There is no such thing as a density diagram.
Based on the workshop.
There is a downtown boundary.
And then we discussed density within the downtown boundary.
No, ma'am.
We discussed that if we added...
Or we were going to come back
Right.
and actually...
No, I understand. So, subject to final approval by council, but to add that square into the discussion for future approval. That would be adding the density needed in the Brown neighborhood mixed use and some of the industrial. Right now, it looks like this. I'm saying to add this square into our density diagram.
What are the boundaries that you propose to add to the downtown diagram?
For density discussion, it would be 6th Avenue East and Southwest 2nd Street to Lucy Street. Right here.
If you can hear me, I want to add to this conversation. If you can hear me. I have two questions.
Hold on, Councilman.
Go ahead, let's let Councilman Roth go.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question to the resident who lives in that area already, which is Councilwoman Bailey. So if we expanded the density or increased the density, and I would say it would have to be north of 2nd, it may be all the way to 4th Street, if not 6th Street to the north, and then down to Lucy Street on the south. If we put a 5-story, 6-story building all along Chrome Avenue with mixed use underneath that, as a resident that lives in that area, how would you feel about those buildings being erected right around your community?
That would already exist.
So, you know, the historic downtown is untouched, right? It is further down along the busways where there are no single-family homes where I see this happening. So that's why I mentioned also, you know, the whole area in yellow, the single-family neighborhood, those residents are not going to have that, give or take a few on one side. They're not going to have that right next to them. Those neighborhoods will still feel like neighborhoods, and the areas with the mixed use will be areas with mixed use. That's how I see it.
So so collectively as a group, you're saying we're going to preserve the historic or the old Homestead from 2nd Street to what street going south?
That historic downtown.
So does it stop at where Homestead Station is? Which is Maury? Or do we continue it down to Lucy Street?
Doesn't historic Homestead start at?
Well, Maury, this map is Maury Street.
I think it starts at 4th, but I don't know.
4th to Maury?
Northwest.
Right.
Yes,
Northwest
this
4th
Southwest
Street.
plan
Right.
runs from Maury all the way down to Lucy.
So nothing north of Maury is included in the Southwest plan?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Councilman Roth, your example about having a 5-story building with commercial on the bottom and residential on top, according to what my understanding is, that's already allowed in the Southwest Master Plan up to 15 units per acre along Chrome Avenue.
Right.
But that's south of Maury, is that right?
South of Maury to Lucy Street, correct. That's the only part, that's what's in the Southwest Neighborhood Plan. Above, north of Maury is not on this map. So I guess that would be what, the Northwest Master Plan? What's above, there's no master plan for the Northwest?
Well, there's a master plan, but we don't have a plan like this. Just like there was a study that was done, Northwest Master Plan, but it's not anything like this, detailed like this.
So what would be allowed, just to stay on the example of a commercial first floor and residential on top, what would be allowed at Chrome Avenue and First Street?
Historic downtown.
Now that would be historic downtown?
So north of Maury is not considered historic downtown Homestead. Is that right?
I'm waiting for an answer.
I'm sorry, Councilman, what was that question again?
North of Maury on Chrome Avenue, east and west, US 1 to 6th Avenue is not considered downtown Homestead. I'm sorry, historic
It's not
downtown.
considered the Southwest Master Plan area.
or it's part of the downtown, but not part of the southwest neighborhood.
Correct.
And I see where he's going with it, is that we kind of want to look at it more altogether. Like, let's take this out of its petri dish and look a little bit more
Yeah, we're
broadly.
gonna bring up the historic district right now, the little southern corner to the west, I think, touches a little bit on the southwest master plan, so.
Oh, okay. Let me ask Mr. Cordino this. In this package, we have a paragraph that talks about traditional multifamily neighborhood.
Okay, Jim.
That's page 19. Traditional multifamily neighborhood is defined at up to 20 units per acre. Where would we find that on this map?
Traditional multifamily.
It's the orange.
Yes, it's the orange. It is
So, like,
west of 6th. It's generally to the south and west.
Okay, down fronting,
8th Street,
fronting Lucy Street.
and then again back further west.
Kind of like shotgun property.
West, yeah, correct, over there.
Okay.
That's where that
Okay.
is.
All right. Because I'm wondering if, striking a balance here, adding some orange in the heart of this brown
Mm-hmm.
would be advisable. Because just the thought that, you know, on a very limited basis on the interior, I think the Vice Mayor made a good point earlier about the through streets. 6th Avenue and 4th Street should probably be preserved as more of the commercial corridors with less density on that street. But as you get into the heart of that, away from that intersection, perhaps 20 units to the acre would be more appropriate and well suited to, as some believe, supportive of downtown.
Brandon, can you put that map so that we can see what the mayor was saying?
Well, we've got this one. We've all got this one.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah.
so there's only so what he's saying, there's only 4 streets that come all the way through. It's Chrome, it's 4th, it's 6th,
Maui Road.
and it's, Redmond Road. So, if you drive through this area, and you call some of those people that have their lots for sale, and you ask them, what is the zoning? They say, oh, it's mixed use. And you go, well, you don't have such a big footprint, how are you gonna, add parking? He's like, well, we have to find a way, you can put, they were already telling me how to kind of get around the system. That leads me to believe that it's not, correct. So this mixed use in this area here, it doesn't seem like it's realistic. However, if it's on a through street, the people that are gonna use, one of those streets to go up to the other side, they'd be willing to stop and, purchase something on a mixed use type of building. But I just think it's too much. So, for me, it'd be multifamily all through, especially on this busway, because I don't understand why we would have industrial on the busway where, they could take advantage of, getting on the bus. So, a lot of this in this area that's blue would be orange, would be multifamily, so that we could try to push people into downtown now with more rooftops.
You have to be careful with downzoning, the industrial stuff. The units that you give them have to equate to an industrial value. What my thought was, and that was when I need to be as tall as you are, trying to moving into here, some of the 20-unit stuff, not fronting the main corridors, but a half a
You have a little
block
buzzer thing?
off, kind of as a nucleus spreading out.
And I've used this to get, to and from the other side.
Can you keep
Fourth
both?
Street.
Can I ask a question, please? James, can they keep both? Can we just add the multifamily and let them allow also industrial and like an either or?
Those are pretty incompatible uses. Industrial is very intense.
and not even building it, but just to avoid like a Burton Harris.
But the industrial area.
I mean, you could, but then you're just setting yourself up to getting the complaints with residential next to it, heavy industrial, or, I mean, you could do it, but it doesn't really.
What were you saying about downzoning?
Well, okay, industrial, let's just take the proposition that industrial property has higher value than even multifamily.
No, but they're legal non-conforming uses.
Did an overlay of 20 units to the acre on all or most of the industrial and remove that industrial use, you're faced with taking claims.
Right.
Right, James? Generally speaking, that we downzone the property, so then it would become, how many units does it take to meet that industrial value to perhaps,
How do we figure that out?
obviate those claims?
How do,
Hire a
is there,
consultant,
but is there like a formula?
analysis, an economic study analysis.
It's an economic
Like
issue.
the minute you do that, you're doing, I believe, the same thing that's going on north of Homestead along US 1.
Oh, my goodness.
Very high rise, very high density. Yeah, you don't have to get elected for 3 more years, but the rest of us are in big trouble over that kind of product.
Again, my thought process is always how to push people into downtown. That's where I'm going with it, and it's very specific. You know, it's smart growth, which you mentioned a lot of us. We're growing smart, and we're going to put them somewhere. I mean, do you feel that, you know, multifamily should be along those ways?
In Homestead, very limited up to the west, in here.
So let me ask the question, like, what is the vision here? Is it to have a stronger commercial footprint within this district here? Is it to increase commercial and residential? I think we all need to be on the same page on what our vision is here so that we can get to that. Because it looks like you're trying to help to increase commercial, to drive people into that area.
Increase density.
Increase density.
Yeah, I mean, commercial, I like commercial, like on the Chrome corridor, I like commercial on the corridor where you can get from one street to the other. I disagree with the mixed use in this area, because I've driven through there many times, and it just doesn't seem like it.
So to that point, it seems like our visions are different. So we're not going to we're throwing darts and not hitting the target.
Well,
But I want you to know where I'm at, but I'm willing to concede.
Can I just add?
So you're saying we perhaps in this area have too much mixed use.
It's a lot.
It's an awful lot. James?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, reading the language in your plan, the brown area, which is neighborhood mixed use, it's the sub-area is designed to achieve the greatest flexibility of the sub-area.
So residential is allowed in there?
Yeah.
Residential is allowed.
It's the
But
large,
it is as to what level of units per acre.
and the mixed use comes in because with the new residents, then there's required a new corner store, so that's the benefit, is walking a block or
On these
two.
corridors, you have new stores to support the folks that are in these mixed-use units in here.
And that can,
It's 15 units per acre, and the height is up to 5 stories, not to exceed 70 feet, depending on the building type, and regulations as set forth in the master plan.
So conceivably, if you wanted to, you could move this area to 20 units and 7 stories so that we don't eclipse the height of our parking garage. That's my standard. And you're creating density to promote commercial here. And if you're a believer that people in this density will go downtown, then you've solved that problem as well.
and I think that obviously that would be great, but another even bigger focus is how are we protecting the Southwest and the historical aspects of it. And the only way we get there is to make sure that things stay affordable, and that happens with more density and less single family, so that's another big thing.
Now, let me throw another fly in the ointment for all of y'all that probably aren't up on this. somewhere down here around Lucy Street and Sixth Avenue. There's an existing county housing project, just to the west of the Lay Hardin project. Part of it is vacant, and part of it is product comparable to what we saw in Homestead Gardens.
I think that's Milton Manor.
Maybe it was county owned. It may have been built at one time, but it's county owned. Under the current version of the RTZ, as county-owned property, if RTZ is passed in its current form, they will retain the right to build at 25 stories at 250 units per acre, and we've calculated that at like 1,016 units. Now, I've already spoken with our county commissioners, and at least one is sympathetic to our position, that is totally out of scope and scale for Homestead and the Southwest community. But there is the risk, we may have 4,000 new residents on a 5-acre parcel sooner rather than later, because once the county includes that in an RTZ designation, don't think there won't be folks foaming at the mouth to come take that out as a privately constructed and managed county project. That's just the facts of life, people. It's in the RTZ.
I think that Commissioner can speak to this, but I do think that there's already been some interest in the county redeveloping that property.
Yeah, and the RTZ would allow them to ignore our local rules and develop at the max under the pending RTZ of revisions. So just so you know.
They're exempting out their property.
They are exempting county-owned property in the city limits from lesser rules. And it also includes the play field to the south of Homestead Middle School. That 5-acre parcel, as a county-owned parcel, if the school board deemed that they didn't need it for school facilities, and under the actions that Mayor Levine Cava is taking now, we could see that same kind of product on that 5-acre play field. The RTZ is full of a lot of problems.
Lots little. Can I just because we're kind of all over the place, which is good, and it's a needed discussion. But I would like to just, if we could just focus on the Chrome Avenue corridor and the commercial on the Chrome Avenue corridor. It sounds like you all are okay with the way it exists now, with it being mixed use and allowing 15 units per acre.
I would like to see more density allowed on Chrome Avenue.
But you're okay the way it,
I don't want to go less.
You don't want to go less, but for purposes of just discussion, like, you're okay with what it is now. No one's looking to reduce.
With the mixed-use component?
With the mixed-use component, right.
It offers the most flexibility.
Now, second question, we talked about unit size, and there was discussion, some cities allow for micro units or these types of things. Is everybody okay with the minimum unit size requirements that we currently have in the code?
Which is 1,000 square feet.
No.
For a single use.
Plus 150 square feet for every bedroom.
So for a one unit, 1,000 square foot.
One bedroom unit is 1,000 square feet.
I'm going to defer to Councilman Roth and Councilman Guzman on that one.
I'm going to
Yeah,
say,
I'd go with
if
Lois.
you're going to defer to me, that I think the 1-bedroom unit at 1,000 square feet is awfully large for the downtown district.
Yeah, my condo in Villas at Carmel is less than 1,000, and it's a 3-bedroom.
Those are 880 square feet. Oh, that one, yeah, is less than 1,000, but we've got
It's
plenty of
very-
2-bedroom, 2-bath units that are 880 square feet, and that's 2-bedroom, 2-bath. So the
That's
1-bedroom unit could be even, but we're talking about a specific person too. We're not talking about a family of 4 living in there. So it's usually going to be 1 or maybe 2 people that are young kids, whether it be market rate rent. I'm not into the subsidized or the affordable stuff, or market rate, purchase prices. a one-bedroom unit in a downtown district is going to be, a rather affordable thing already. So I just think that we could go smaller on those units to increase, that type of person in the area. So that's just my thought.
Perpetuating the construction of more subsidized units is all that does.
No, I'm not for subsidized units, not at all. And I don't know if we can put restrictions on that for building purposes. This is not, in my vision, a subsidized area. This is to create a vibrant, lively, family atmosphere. We're gonna have a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom, whether they be houses, condos, townhouses, or apartments, that all add to the vibrancy and the life of the downtown area, to enjoy the new Losner Park, to enjoy the amenities that have been built there now. But you've got to bring some life into that area, or those things will die away.
I was given advice by a representative of a company that does a lot of subsidized and affordable workforce type products, and he assured me that 1,000 square feet would really tend to discourage projects being built as an affordable subsidized or some sort of subsidy, whether it be workforce or true Section 8. And as you reduce the unit size and increase density, it makes it more and more attractive for those developers to come in and do subsidized type projects. And no, to my understanding, we cannot say you cannot build a subsidized or voucher type project.
We cannot get into the discussion of ownership,
Nope.
and we can't get into dictating whether or not someone. We can't get into the issue of whether something's subsidized or not subsidized, or the ownership issue.
But the entire,
Village provides a layer of protection.
yeah, but the entire east side was subsidized through CDDs, and the infrastructure and the clubhouses, and, that's not a problem.
No, but that's a different type,
But
I'm talking about a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act and the American with Disabilities Act. And so we cannot get into, I don't think we should get into a discussion with regard to the ownership of the property. I think we should just keep it at a level as to what the minimum unit size should be, or you all think it should be. And that can be different for this area or an area in the southwest neighborhood as to somewhere else in the city.
Is there a minimum to how many bedrooms the unit must have? Or do they allow studios?
No.
Do they allow studios, allows?
They're 1-bedroom apartments. We don't have, studios are typically smaller units, micro units, as Vice Mayor previously referenced.
So our plan requires at least 1 bedroom. Okay. And it has to be 1,150, or 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet, and then every additional bedroom is 100.
When you guys went to visit the downtown Doral with Mr. Milo, what size?
Oh, I'd have to ask, I didn't recall.
I specifically asked him. They were less than that, and I felt like I was in a college dorm room. That is not the way. I hope to never have to live that way, and that everybody in our community doesn't have to live that way in the future. They are tiny.
All right.
Prevents hoarding.
How many bedrooms?
I think the unit I saw was a 2-2, and it was like 800 square feet.
Wait, let me step in here for a second. Maybe Joe or Michelle, you can answer this question. There was recently an apartment complex in the southwest section that was totally renovated from top to bottom. Those units are about 300 square feet per unit. Is that right?
I can't speak to the unit sizes, but that rehabilitated project fell under the existing non-conforming uses section of the code, and what they did were specific upgrades to the overall development that didn't trigger our non-conforming section to push it over into full redevelopment. we could find out what those unit sizes were, but I don't have that information really available.
Vice Mayor, most of the units in the landings are not 1,000 square feet. You know, those rehab apartments at $300,000 a unit that we have.
I think try to get to a happy medium with your point. 700 is a safe number for me. 700 is a safe number for me on the question that
For a
you asked.
one-bedroom? Absolutely.
In the,
Yeah, I'm just trying to help facilitate some of this discussion because
get to the vision.
Because I don't think you're going to solve everything today. We have a piggyback discussion on food trucks after this, but I'm trying to pin down, at least with respect to this corridor, this commercial Chrome Avenue corridor, because we have an applicant who's pending, who's deferred, who's looking for to see what comes out of this that he may or may not include in his project that might be coming back before you.
Question, is there any objection to increasing the minimum number of bedrooms, making it a minimum of 2 bedrooms, and then doing 800 square feet? So that you don't have one-bedroom condos?
Vice Mayor mentioned earlier, there's new, or I think it was the architect even, newly graduated professionals wanting to come.
Okay, so stay with the one bedroom?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm fine with the 700.
we're basically creating alternatives and options for just about everyone in the area.
Okay.
And in Homestead, you wanna be in an urban type of housing community, or you want to go out to the Redlands? Like, we're providing options. But when you have the urban style, you're going to promote downtown, which is a problem that I really like.
So if you're reducing the minimum size of the units, are we simply talking about now just in the Southwest neighborhood? For right now?
I wouldn't be
Okay.
But if you're still subject to 15 density, what benefit is that?
Right, there's no
to incentivize
difference.
people to come in? Not that I'm advocating for more density, but,
I think they have to go hand in hand. You can't reduce the size. Because it goes exactly to the point what the gentleman said. What's the purpose of reducing the minimum unit size when you're not going to increase the density? I mean, the purpose of this conversation is to, hopefully, we can come to a consensus on, increasing the density in this area
in order to.
in order to promote downtown.
There you go. That's the vision.
I'm good with that
Do you
vision.
believe that density that far away from downtown is going to support downtown?
I think it's the closest we got to a developer that says, I'm willing to give it a shot. And typically when one developer does it, and if we create the right policies, developers will come. They will invest, but they don't want to invest now because it's so cumbersome to invest the way we've got our.
Of one-bedroom apartments where there aren't room for families to come in. The application that was before us, that since proponents are here tonight, provided I think it was 3-bedroom units. Is that correct?
Actually, there were 4 bedrooms.
4-bedroom units.
And we heard you, and we have modified it to 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, but the issue was the following. We prepared a plan with 780 square feet per unit, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. But it comes to us because in the code was not specific. But after that, zoning department explained to us that the minimum is 1,000 plus 150 per. So we need about 1,300. So we have to go to 2-story apartments. And at that point, it comes the 4-bedroom because of disability. We want a bedroom in the first floor. You know what I mean? So when you didn't like in the other committee, we take it out. But we still have
but 1,500 square feet apartment, just past 3 bedrooms, you know?
I guess my point was, are we promoting the overdevelopment of small one-bedroom apartments by reducing it from 1,000 to 700 and potentially increasing density? Don't we need a diversity of product?
So what you're saying is, the developer can turn around and do all one-bedroom, 700 square feet units. Where I think we can put in some restrictions where you've got to have a mix. Michelle, right? That's allowable. You have a mix. Huh?
Yeah, you can craft parameters for the Southwest neighborhood specific to the sub-areas, right? I mean, we'll have to modify the comp plan, everything to achieve that, but if you all want to either increase the density or modify the unit size and put parameters on unit sizes only if you are doing a true mixed-use product, right, where there's commercial and residential, you can do that. We could draft those parameters so you can contain it. I mean, you can start out with something and see what it does, right? And then see if it fosters the type of development, right? And if it doesn't, you can come back and look at it. I mean, start somewhere, right? It doesn't have to be the whole thing. You can.
And I would pose the question to both you and Mr. Cordino, who do extensive work in other communities. Can you think of another code that I don't want to reinvent the wheel, that already lays out that, codifies that mix of bedrooms?
We could research the DKUC, which is the Downtown Trumbull Urban Center. We could research Midtown Development. So I live in downtown Stateland at the North Station. My building is about 15 years old. My unit is a one-bedroom and it's 850 square feet. It's a really nice building. And then the building next door has smaller units, it's a higher building, it's denser, and I think they go down to like 600 square feet a unit. So you could develop a mixture of sizes, as Vice Mayor indicated, whatever.
I think we can find those places. I think that, like Michelle was saying, that they exist, but the flexibility tends to happen the denser the buildings get, because they can provide, at that point, they can make their money and then provide for smaller units, so that so not necessarily that they're subsidized, but they're more affordable, right? So they tend to get density bonuses or height bonuses necessarily for the unit mix. So they tend to put the smaller units on the ground floors, and then they make their money on the larger units the higher up the building goes, and then they like to have a little bit of height because then you've got a view. And I think that a smaller building, I think 5 stories is pretty tall, but anything less than that, you start to get pinned into inflexibility relative to those. They tend to be all one-sized units.
Well, I'm not about size, I'm about configuration.
Yeah. We mean with the diversity of units.
The number of bedrooms.
Oh, with bedrooms, yeah, that means the unit size is a little bit bigger. So I'll look at those, and I think you mentioned South Miami earlier. I think they may have something like that, and
I think there's a plethora of
Well, you can give us some examples of those solutions, so that we don't get front-loaded with a bunch of small one-bedroom apartments that increase densities. So to recap, where are we leaving our staff to,
I think we at least took care of the Chrome Avenue, commercial.
by doing,
With Gene's question, he just.
yes, he answered the question. So, to recap, we've asked them to perhaps bring back a code amendment for the southwest area that allows for smaller Now, would these be multifamily or single-family? That's single-family.
The 700 units? I mean, the 700 square feet? That's your question?
Yeah.
Not single family.
Okay.
A one-bedroom house? No, I think that's a box.
There are homes on Northwest Sixth Avenue built in the 40s that are less than 1,000 square.
Yeah, no, I know, but with regards to the conversation on Chrome Avenue, that would be with the commercial on the bottom, the units above, that with 700 minimum. That's what we're talking about?
So true vertical mixed use.
Yeah. In the big vertical mixed-use concept, reducing the minimum unit size.
Correct.
Was there, and I'm sorry if I missed it, consensus on going ahead and increasing that chrome frontage density from 15 to 20?
Yes.
You do that, remember our friend across the street with 11 acres, he's probably waiting outside with bated breath, bringing it up, to 20 units per acre going from chrome to US 1, because we're not doing this in a vacuum. Is that what we really want on US 1 in Homestead? I don't. Certainly not smaller units.
You're saying US 1 or Chrome Avenue?
What's that?
You're saying US 1 or Chrome Avenue?
I'm talking about the parcel that is surrounded by the home on one side, the Bravo parcel. Is, you know, if we do that and adopt that, we could 55 more units.
We still have to, I mean, he'd have to bring us a site plan, and we don't like the site plan. We don't have to.
He's got the right to the units.
He has the right to the unit.
And that's the argument over on East Cycle. They got the right to build. Here you go.
For my clarification, sir, I'm sorry, are you intending, are you talking about the whole area? So this is Chrome, and then this is US 1.
I'm talking, if we intend to amend the entire Southwest Master Plan to allow for smaller units and increase density of up to 20 across the board, that is going to include the 11 acres that's across the street from the 500 homes, which to me opens up a whole other can of worms.
Can we restrict it to a certain area as opposed to being blanket across the?
Why not? Restrict it to the west side of Chrome Avenue.
I think it should be restricted.
I can support that.
I don't think it should be carte blanche throughout the
And
Southwest Master Plan.
didn't you want to keep the single families as is?
Oh, yeah.
So-
We're talking about
Right.
the brown.
Okay. And, okay.
So we're talking about the brown,
And
but
the
we're
peach.
also talking about,
The peach.
because remember, the commercial sub-area along Chrome Avenue,
We're on the west of Chrome, including the brown.
These changes would be limited to the west side of Chrome
that's
Avenue.
which include the commercial sub-area
And the neighborhood
and
mixed.
the neighborhood mixed use.
Correct.
Not the single family.
Okay.
Sure, please.
Okay. So that's going to 20 units?
So talking about changing the density for the commercial sub-area.
No, the west of
West of
Chrome.
Chrome.
So west of Chrome only, so this.
Correct. And the brown.
And the brown.
Right. And then
So that would allow for an increase of up to 20 units per acre. And then if you wanted to reduce the minimum unit size to 700, do you also want to keep it in a similar proportion or methodology for every additional bedroom? Like that's the minimum unit size?
Yeah, how is that going to be for us?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to?
I think 100 is, what's the
10 by 13?
Not a bedroom, we just needed to have a closet and a,
right, but they want more common area within the home too.
Yeah. It doesn't mean the bedroom's gonna be 150 square feet. It gives you the,
Based on those calculations, what would be a 3-bedroom unit? So it's 700 plus
150.
300?
1,050.
The
Yeah.
bedrooms are included within the 1,000. If 2 bedrooms or fewer within 1,000, and then for every additional, it's 150.
Okay.
11.
So it's 1150.
1150 would be a 3-bedroom? Okay. That's fine.
I really, look, and west of Chrome
Figure that
Avenue,
out.
I could live
Fine.
with an 850 one-bedroom, 1,000 two-bedroom, and 1,150 three-bedroom.
I know, that's the way that we have it right now is more square footage than what's already been proven to have worked on the east side. So I'm fine with the 700 plus 150 for each additional bedroom. And it's 700 for a two-bedroom.
I never agree with anything like that. My total snap off before I agree to 20 units per acre. I'm trying to do exactly like pound of flesh for the rest of you.
I'm still good with 700 square feet. I think that's 700.
Minimum, and then the 150 for each additional, and that 700 is including two bedrooms?
Yeah. One.
Well, what is it that he just said? I made a
So
clarification.
right now, under this
1,000 is for two bedrooms.
the minimum unit size is 1,000, which you can have a one bedroom or a two bedroom, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you choose, but the minimum is 1,000. And then anything above that
Is 150.
is 150 square feet for each bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially, under your proposal, you could have a two-bedroom, 700 square foot unit. Is that your intention?
Depending on the right family, I mean, it could be, some elderly people. I mean, it all depends on the family.
So then,
Thank you, Council.
I think closer to 8 if we're talking,
so 850 would be like 700 plus 300 square feet more for a three-bedroom would be 1,000 for a three-bedroom.
Well, hold on, let me understand. So the rule today, Eddie, right, says for 1,000 square feet,
You could do
you get two bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
For the third bedroom, you gotta add 150. So I'm just figuring
So we're just dropping
that if we drop it to 700, that's for the first two bedrooms. Once you get the third, you add 150 to that.
But I thought
And
That's what we're talking about. And the question is 700
big enough.
big enough for two bedrooms?
I don't know.
No.
700, 850, and 1,000 is probably doable. But if you try to,
Well, I know that less than 1,000 is doable because I own a condo that has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, very spacious, where my family of 4 lived in comfortably for several years in the east side. So I know it already works. So just saying, like, if you want to do research on what already is existing and marketable and attractive, it exists here in Homestead.
we need to meet that architect, because the 1,300 square foot county house behind my house sucks.
Well, he didn't build
The
that.
living room is about as wide as this table, and they tried to stuff 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms in it. Of course, it's been empty for 2 years.
It's good architecture and good design is, and when you have fresh properties with fresh design and architecture with new materials and new building styles, I think that they'll be able to provide great market, products for the market. But if you could do a 2-bedroom with 1,000 already, going down to 850 really isn't, a change that we spent 2 hours discussing.
Okay, 700, 850, and 1,000.
700 for one?
For one, 800 for 2. I can
Live with that.
850 for a two and a minimum of 1,000 for a three. And then anything above that,
A
you add,
bedroom would be 1,150.
right.
So we're reducing the guideline by 150 square feet. Because a 3-bedroom right now, as is, would be 1,150. So just to clarify.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So I just want to say a couple of things. I've been doing this kind of multifamily for a very long time. And the numbers that are coming up right now, it's about the correct one. Usually, again, it's 20, 30 years ago, developers that I used to work for, they used to say, look, we need maybe like 60% would be 2 bedrooms, 20% would be 1 bedroom, and 20% would be 3 bedrooms. Because, you got to give that
Variety.
One of the things we're talking about is the size of the units and then the density. Yeah, if the density, and I understand now that you want to increase it from 15 to 20, considering that, which will help. But otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to reduce the number of units. I mean, the size of the unit, if the density doesn't go up.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're talking about increasing the density across the board.
But another thing that you have to also talk about is the number of parkings that are gonna be required for the one bedroom, the two bedroom, and the three bedroom. Same number of parking spaces?
I think we need to change that. Order it short.
All right, so can we move forward with the 700, 850, and 1,000 with the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom?
Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so I have two, I'm sorry, West of Stroman. So far I have expansion of architectural parameters, right? We don't exactly know what that is, but we're gonna broaden it to make it a little bit more fluid and broad in its applicability. We're going to modify for west of Chrome in the commercial sub-area, in the neighborhood mixed-use sub-area. We're going to modify the regulations to specify that the minimum unit sizes are 700 for a one-bedroom, 850 for a two, 1,000 for a three, and then anything additional, in addition to a three-bedroom, any additional bedroom is 150 square feet more. Okay. Now, to the next question. Do you or do you not want to change the density with regards to those two sub-areas, or maybe only one sub-area? Maybe the neighborhood. So.
Well, I would like to see it match our downtown density that we end up going with, so why don't we table that discussion until we have the final discussion with our...
Downtown, 3 areas, main area 1, area 2, and area 3. Whatever we finalize for that number, whatever our max density is gonna be, then we come back and apply it to.
I think that's the best way to look at it, versus starting here and then trying to match it with the rest.
By the way, when are we having that discussion?
Yeah.
I don't know.
As soon as I can herd you cats back.
Okay, if you could tell me again about the minimum lot size. I know that there were, the way it worked its way down to 3,600. We require 5,000, but it works its way down to 36, depending on a few different factors. If there's a property across or adjacent to it.
In the block.
So the bare minimum is 3,600, Michelle? If it meets certain criteria.
Bare minimum of which
Minimum lot size.
depends on the sub-area. So for neighborhood mixed use, the minimum lot size is not stated. I mean, what is it? Doesn't have a minimum lot size.
Which one, what is
Neighborhood.
I think overall it says minimum lot size for residential development permitted in the neighborhood is 5,000 square feet. The various sub-areas can further restrict permitted lot sizes. However, detached single-family residential structures may be constructed on parcels as small as 3,600 square feet if, on the same block, other detached single-family structures exist on lots of the same size, less than 5,000 square feet. So existing platted lots are less than the minimum lot size lot size required may be developed and provided documentation which is provided illustrates the platted diameter. So if you're on a block,
the acres of chicken.
right? Well, in this case, look,
You gotta find it comparable.
Existing house.
if you're less than 5,000 square feet and you're on another block with other houses less than that, you can build it to that if they're Other stuff has to exist.
So it's meant to be with parity,
So it's
with
kind of grandfathering
the street, the area.
your neighbors or...
No, he mentioned earlier in the car.
I think that for tonight, though, I'd like to revisit the conversation, but let's go ahead and assign the density to the 20 units, so that it's done and it's part of this conversation, and then we can revisit it.
Let them go ahead and put that puzzle piece in that we can pull out and change
Right.
later.
So,
So
Everyone's
we're
okay with that?
everyone's
Yeah.
the 20 units west of,
The peach and the brown,
for the commercial and the traditional.
the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, the neighborhood. Okay.
Are you saying for the commercial and the neighborhood?
Right.
Well, but that, to me, that brings up the issue in the commercial context. If one of us had concerns on an application back in April that there was no room for amenities. Kids in those apartments had no yard, they had parking in the back. So then you're just multiplying the number of families.
Right, but then it was clarified that how close you are to Losner Park, and then you have all this green open space. What park is there on Lucy Street? What is that, Eighth and, is that a developed park that we own?
That is,
It says green, parks, open space, it's on Lucy Street, between Flagler and, First Avenue.
Well, that's what it's planned to be, but when you look at the aerial, it's not what it is.
What is it?
So,
It looks like half of it's vacant. Actually, on the vacant plan, half of it is vacant. So maybe that gives us the opportunity to look at some of the CRA-owned properties that are not okay to build single-family and maybe consider turning that into, a parking. Well, none of that's supposed to,
That's definitely a discussion that we need to have regarding these CRA lots to determine what we can do to unify, so they're just there for another day.
Mr. White, Mr. Cordino have the marching orders for the month?
but you were gonna answer a question about what's there now. Half of it's vacant, and then the other half.
yeah,
Oh, do I have to look at this?
I'm looking at this aerial, which would appear to be the,
You bring it up on Google.
Well, it has a tree on it, like
We're
it
gonna bring
is
it
a
up
park.
Google Earth. We're gonna bring it up on Google Earth.
Okay. Does that mean it's government-owned, because it's green?
I think that's part of that county parcel that I said it would be in the RTZ.
You might be right.
Because those buildings, I believe the buildings just to the north of it,
Lucy.
county owned.
On Lucy and Chrome.
It's owned by Miami-Dade County.
And that is called out as an add-on parcel in the RTZ, or an RTZ expansion, which is what our concern is of those 1,016 units.
Where is it? Follow Julio.
This way.
Yeah.
That's,
Hayden Park. I've never been.
okay, so back here,
There's the building there.
That's Milton, yeah, that is it.
I believe this parcel is a county-owned parcel.
Did they convey that to Leisure Dean? I know they were,
Yeah, they are deemed like.
Well, we do that.
oh,
Like,
okay.
they think,
where were you going with that?
Well, if we were talking about park space available, and if we were
something
an amenities and,
like, put a referendum.
Without the amenities.
Like,
That's our issue with.
With the other,
but that could be part of the design requirements that we require amenities, whether it's in.
Yeah, we just can look at amenities the same way for downtown, because that's the whole point of having a lot of things available
Right.
in the downtown. Not everybody needs their own
There goes.
little centers. That's what's required in other areas.
I think we're good.
What do you mean?
I think all we're gonna take
You got that right.
5 to 10
so, wait, before we leave, I know I have those 3 items, but what I want to explain to you all is that those are going to,
4 on my list, by the way. What?
4, with
Expand the architecture, modify,
the unit size, and
Size.
density.
okay.
3.
I have west of Chrome on there, here's another one, so.
No, that's, we can separate that into the same.
Right, everything's going to be west of Chrome.
Okay.
So in order to accomplish those things, right, that's going to require us to modify 3 documents you heard in April, has modified their plan. They are seeking to come forward next month. We had discussions about that based on this conversation and based on the direction of this conversation, that the applicant could get a do-over. And if they needed to apply for a variance to accomplish what we are doing here, then they would be able to do so. So the applicant's here. Are you all still on board with that?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is probably going to take a little bit to work through, and the applicant, we can't hold the applicant that long. So
That's fine. So we're going to expect variances.
So the applicant's here. I don't know. We can talk to the applicant after, outside, but you very well may expect a variance because
Got it. Question.
in this limited case, I normally always say, and I've said, and I have opined, that we don't allow use variances. And use variances are tied to density, the type of residential. But I think in this case, specifically because we're doing this, in this case.
Got it. Do you need direction on the lot sizes? Do you still have a pending
No,
question?
I understand that.
So we're leaving the lot sizes the same?
I just wanted the bare minimum, which is
3,600 is what it is? And, okay, all right.
Between 36 and 50. Conditions exist.
Got it, okay, thank you. Yay! Anyone online want to say something?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's.
All right, the second one,
We talk about that. About those laws. Yeah, me too.
What else should we do?
Let's get that one out the door, let's get that out the door, and then we'll. Maybe like a 20-minute.
Kamisha.
It's a little.
Homestead City Council workshop. It's about 7:40 p.m. Today is June 21st, 2022. And the next and final item on the agenda is a discussion regarding what we commonly refer to as food trucks. As the county calls it, food dispensing vehicles, parentheses, food trucks. Mr. Vice Mayor, you're the one that brought this to the fore. Take it away.
After our last meeting, we heard the discussion and we heard a lot of concerns as to why, some of the council members were apprehensive towards food trucks. However, I sent some information to James on how some other cities have created code or created some parameters to try to regulate food trucks. And I wanted James to articulate that information to us, see if it addresses some of the concerns that we originally had.
Yeah, so subsequent to the council meeting that, back in May, discussing this, Vice Mayor sent me some information from the food truck program in Delray. Now, that was adopted in 2016 before the more recently enacted statutory provisions that preempt us from permitting and licensing and those issues. But we still retain our jurisdiction with regards to zoning, with respect to where we want to be located, with respect to land development regulations. And so, there are some, I guess, primary issues or concerns that were raised at the last meeting sort of some benchmark level things, like A, is everybody on board with allowing food trucks? We talked about maybe, instituting a pilot. We can't prohibit them by law. So, but we can develop a pilot program and indicate what zoning districts or what areas in the city where we think is appropriate for food trucks to be permitted. I talked about there's two sort of columns, if you will, of food trucks. Those that operate, that are city-sponsored, with city events that happen citywide, those are policy decisions that you all can, modify, amend at your discretion. But with regards to actually adopting some regulations or framework for codification that gives everybody, staff and the food truck folks, the framework as to what we allow in the city. So with respect to that, I guess, in order for me to help develop this pilot program, I need some baseline information, sort of as to if we're going to do a pilot program, where do we want it? We talked about the need that, if somebody wants to put it on private property, then they would have to get, the area would have to be such that it doesn't prohibit the required parking or the circulation or the fire of an existing building. We talked about, the vice mayor talked about having the ability to do like a food truck park on a vacant parcel. And there was some discussion about what the minimum size of that could be or look like. I don't think we pinned it down, but there was a notion of this concept that has been happening over the last few years where there are food trucks and, you allow a certain number of food trucks on a piece of property, and it's a food truck, food court, if you will. And it has common or communal tables and benches and facilities for folks, and there might be 5 food trucks or 4 or 6 that people can park and access as an outdoor event. And then there are regulations with regards to, do you care how long a food truck is located on a piece of property? Right, set aside the food truck park concept, just the notion of allowing food trucks, let's say, in a commercial zoning district. So if a food truck came and wanted to operate in a Publix parking lot, right, and there was the ability to do that in the area, do you care how long that food truck is there? Do you want to limit the time frame the food truck can be there? Do you want limitations on, it can only be there for 3 consecutive days, 2 consecutive days, or only so many times a year? I mean, there's a whole plethora of regulations that we can delve into, and most all cities have a different sort of take on it, right? Some people put spatial requirements that you have to be so far away from a brick and mortar restaurant, or you can only be located in this corridor or this district. So I need to get from you all sort of a basic idea or concept if you're okay with that. And then if you're okay with that, then I can sort of help frame some legislation and help frame some issues for you for further consideration. But from a optics, bird's eye view based down, I just kind of need some direction from you all as to what you're thinking with respect to rolling out this program. If you want to roll out this program, if you want to regulate or not regulate.
I'm okay with both concepts. If there is a private owner of a property that owns a vacant lot and he has space to put 5 or 6 food trucks, and he creates communal space where people can all sit at the table and it's, covered, protected from rain, and they create a very nice environment, I'm okay with that concept. I'm also okay with the concept of allowing a food truck to be in a commercial zone property, for, they could be there 7 days a week as long as they come and go during regular business hours. Let's say, 9 to 10 p.m., whatever normal restaurant business hours are.
We don't have restaurant business hour or business, we don't regulate the time frames for restaurants or businesses. What you're thinking about is the time frames associated with the sale of alcoholic beverages.
Okay.
So the last call stuff. But you can stay open. We don't have any prohibition on.
I just get a little caught up where if you're going to create an ambiance or an environment and you start putting on music, amplified music, that could bother some people around. So that's one of the parts that I'm struggling with. I'd like to sit at a food truck and listen to some Bob Marley or listen to some music. But I don't want it to become such an issue where, it starts to, create issues for neighbors.
So what's the code that already exists for businesses,
9 p.m. has got a noise ordinance that we've got.
Yeah, we have a noise ordinance. And, that's tied to, decibel levels with respect to whether or not somebody violates that. So this happens whenever you do sidewalk cafe permits or anything outdoors. You're not really going to be on water unless you're on a canal. That amplifies and travels a lot. But on dry land, you could be, we could set parameters so that you're commercial, but you can't be next to residential, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's really where the complaints are going to come from the residential neighbors. You could have a commercial piece of property, but then right next door to it, even though you have a buffer, you could have a townhouse development or some type of residential or multifamily, and there could be an issue with noise, right? So a lot of times, if you allow for amplified noise, you have to do it within a specified time frame so that you don't violate the noise ordinance, or you don't want to let them go, or even in the middle of the day, or 8 o'clock at night, you don't want them cranking it up to where they exceed the decibel level, right? That becomes a code enforcement issue, but you got to start somewhere, right? So you can try it out. You can limit the time for amplified sound, if you allow for...
Even in our downtown on Crum Avenue, let's say where Showbiz is, where 4-8 used to be, 9 p.m. was the noise decibel?
It was expanded hours for the arts and entertainment.
Yeah, but we're talking about noise.
It's not expanded. What is the arts and entertainment district area?
I think you extended 1 more hour.
Yeah, that's just an extension for the ability to serve alcohol 1 more hour.
Not the noise ordinance?
I think noise falls into there.
Is it?
I'm not sure.
Does it? Okay.
No wonder businesses are shutting down at 8:30 at night on Crum Avenue.
So I think the food truck falls within what we're trying to promote in downtown. So there could be a young chef that doesn't have, the ability to open a brick and mortar. So he starts with a food truck and he starts to get a little, some name recognition and starts to get a following and, and he might live in one of the mayor's units up there on Grove.
Yeah.
See, that's where I'm going. So I'm okay with both concepts.
Okay. So let me ask. So if we're talking about in commercial, right? Commercial that does not abut residential. In that case, do you want to specify we're talking about a food truck park or food truck, whatever we want to call it, right? In that instance, to make it a meaningful type of thing, right, you need to be able to have at least the room for 3 to 4 food trucks to have the communal tables and chairs, restroom facilities, ADA compliance, parking, that type of stuff. Is there, I don't know what that magic number is, but I think you're probably looking at, what, at least a couple of acres? Maybe not? Minimum of an acre?
And also, would it have to be, could the restrooms be ADA compliant with, those portable style, or do they have to be built into the site?
So that's a question that I cannot answer for you. We can find out the answer. I think that's a building code issue that we can explore with the building official. Because if it's going to be permanent, right, then I think that there are things that come with that. Because then if it's permanent, then you have to, like when there's a hurricane warning, you have to make sure that it's tied down properly, or that it can't be moved, or, I mean, if these things are set up to be, they're mobile, but they're set up to be somewhat permanent, but they need to be able to be moved quickly if there's some incident, or they need to, so all of those things we need to take into consideration too. Not a big deal. We already do that for sidewalk cafes, things of that nature, when you have street furniture things, like as soon as there's a hurricane warning, you've got to pick up that stuff, get it off the street.
But I think, Vice Mayor, I want to clarify, you had a concern or a thought that the food truck had to go home every night. It couldn't be parked permanently at a location. Is that correct?
Even for the
Park?
The park can stay there, but when you're in one of those commercial parking lots, so park can remain there permanently.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that, yeah, they'll have to have some kind of infrastructure there. I mean, it's a portable, right? The state regulates how
Mobile parks type of.
Well, it's a food truck, so they have water contained, they have propane or gas, however they have it set up. So that's all done by the state. So the state's going to license that particular food truck, which is inclusive of their health and state license. They'll just show us proof of that. We'll make sure that that's updated, that's regulated. So I get the concept with respect to the permanent food truck or park. Is there a limitation that you want a minimum size, or do we just leave it blank?
In terms of size, in terms of lot size, no, but how do you determine when you are going to disturb the natural flow of, traffic in that area, or, where cars are going to park when they come onto the site? So I think,
well, that's why
site plan will need to be approved.
That's what, we're not going to be able to, under state law, we're not going to be able to permit it, right? But we can ask for, in this case,
Conceptual.
we can frame it, build the legislative framework around, the minimums, right? We'll have to look at I don't know what the exact parking calculation is going to look like, but we can look to other places that have food parks, and it's a pilot program, right? If we have to modify it or change it, then we'll do so, but we've got to start somewhere. But there's a minimum critical for a food park that you're going to have, right? You at least need 3 trucks, right? Most of these trucks are all about the same size. And in order to have a park, you're going to, I would think, need at least 3 to 4. So let me ask this question to start out with. Since we're not really sure as to a minimum size lot, do you want to cap the number of food trucks that can be located on a particular parcel for a food truck park? Like no more than 5 food trucks?
Well, the parcels,
You could have a 10-acre parcel and all of a sudden you could have 50 food trucks.
okay.
So I'm just trying to figure out boundaries to start out with.
Did you have a location?
No, but I also think that the market is going to dictate that too, because if the food truck isn't making any money, they're not gonna stay there very long. You know, so I don't know if limiting the amount is going to really help us get there. I think if the food truck park is providing a service and giving alternative food types to people, and they manage to stay in business and want to continue to come back, I think that's market dictated.
Okay. I get that, and I understand that, but in the realm of trying to regulate from a zoning perspective, it's kind of hard just to be very broad like that, because then we could say that you need adequate parking, you need ADA, but all that is based on, like, some methodology, some calculation, right? Like, I don't know what the exact equation is. It's not like a brick and mortar, right, where you have to have X number of parking, but we can figure out something that works, that's reasonable, but there needs...
So you're looking for more like 3 trucks per half acre?
Something to start with, like some maximum.
Do we have already a set guideline on how much square footage you need to have a business, period? Like, there's no minimum?
Like a special event permit, in a sense?
I'm thinking of Eats and Beats, there were what, 4? 5?
Food trucks?
7.
On how much space?
On the old city hall.
And that was smaller than, I don't think so.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking at least a couple of acres, but it wasn't where people were coming in, buying the food, eating, and leaving. They were hanging around for the entertainment. So the parking requirements were far more intensive due to the entertainment component. So, I'm immediately thinking Eats and Beats too, but I don't know that footprint is a fair comparison.
But if you just take into consideration the part where the tables were and how you would just kind of, walk from truck to truck, and then you would...
More of an intimate.
Yeah, you would just, sit down at the table. So there was, like I said, I think 3 to every half acre seems to be a good start. 3 or 4.
Even
4.
Or a half acre?
So really, on one hand, we're building the framework for private property owners to create or to obtain a permit to establish a food truck park. And that's assuming the zoning is correct and the distance from a residential component.
So for a food truck park, 4 trucks per half acre, we'll deal with, you can't block, you need proper egress, you can't block the right of way, all that sort of stuff. We'll find out what the requirements are for the infrastructure, which needed, it's going to be dictated by the Florida Building Code, so whatever it is, it is.
None of the renderings I see here have like restrooms or designated porta potties in the pictures that you sent.
No.
I don't think it's necessary. I
tried to give you, I tried to provide information on just what it would look like.
don't think we have to regulate it. I think that the park would probably put one in for the convenience of their consumers, and they would have to have it.
Food trucks are 24 feet.
So whatever the requirement is, it is, but if there is none, I say let them self-regulate that component.
Yeah, but a lot of that, sometimes those are not permanent, some are temporary events or special events, kind of like we do at the city,
If it's permanent, do they need like paved parking area, or you could say just park on the flat road?
Well, I mean, right now, whenever you want to do something in the city, from the private development side, you require the property to be, no, I meant like, you don't let someone just do pervious, unpervious. No, I'm just.
Lighting, all this.
Yeah, we could draft all of that sort of stuff, put into play.
When we talk about permanent in this context, are we really talking about the truck doesn't have to go home at night?
Yeah.
They probably will, but they don't have to. In this context, non-permanent means they gotta leave that site at the end of every day, whatever the
Yes.
business.
So I was thinking of food truck. However, the property owner who owns the property, who wants to come in and do a food truck, provided they meet all the criteria that we set in our code, they'll have the ability to dictate what food truck they would like to have or not have, right? And how often they want to switch those out or allow those to be switched out. I don't think we care. If it's a private property, market driven, if this guy wants to be here for 2, 3 weeks or 3 months, that's between them and the private property owner, right?
Okay, so let's talk about, I think conceptually, we kind of believe it would be commercial zoning, and residential setbacks. Would we also include industrial zoning? Would we include allowing churches and schools to establish those kinds of facilities as a means to?
You mean permanent or just temporary?
I think you've got to consider both of those.
There's an interesting example that we may want to look into. In Palmetto Bay, they had a barbecue restaurant at the corner of 168th Street and Old Cutler Road, like Pig Floyd or something like that. But it was basically mobile. There was nothing permanent on the site. The kitchens and the beer. That's right. There were three trucks. It's kind of the concept that you're talking about. Yeah, they had a tent, and then they had tables out front, and they had a parking area that you walk through the fence, and so the parking was even unpaved. That might be a good example.
Where was their bathroom?
They had porta potties, right? And they had, some of them were fancy, right? Like you see at a golf tournament or something like that. Some were just regular construction. But either way, we can call those guys and see what they did to get that.
And that would be allowing out on private property.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Suitably zoned.
It was commercial, yes, it was commercially zoned property. They just ran them out of there, but that's because it smelled like barbecue. Which was fine with me.
So we could do commercially zoned property. It's a pilot program, right? Commercially zoned property for a food truck park, as long as it's not adjacent to residential.
Where are you including the mixed-use residential and the?
No, industrial.
Because then you get the residential issue there.
No, is that B1, B2, B3? Okay.
I have a question. Any vacant property? So like the teal, for example, this is the map I had available. The teal are all vacant properties in the Southwest.
So if it's not abutting residential, it would be.
So I wasn't even talking about the Southwest.
I'm using that as a.
Yeah, I was just talking about just the framework for every city other than Southwest, because it's a little different because of the nature and the mixture of it.
And the lots will only accommodate half a truck.
But conceptually, okay, so the park, commercial, not next to residential, we'll figure out some stuff. I'll put it in the ordinance. We can take away, add to, as we want to. The second part is just on private property, like in the parking lot of a retail, commercial, Publix lot or Target or something, they want to allow, or that they're okay with, you know, Jim's Barbecue coming in, right? Do we care with any parameters as to how long that can be there, or they can operate?
Well, what are they asking for? Are they asking for a permanent spot, or are they asking for a special event?
Well,
That's what my original suggestion was, that we look at it as, you know, you have a permanent situation, and you have a special event, and then maybe you have something that's transient, but we're talking.
well, the problem is that I was trying not to tie this to special events, because the special events only allow you to the food truck would only be there no more than 4 times in a year. But if every Friday Target wants to allow Jim's Barbecue to show up in the parking lot, and we don't care, or it's located in the area where it doesn't impede fire, traffic, pedestrian circulation, any of that sort of stuff, on private property, and they have approval from the property owner. Do we want to limit the stay, or do we care? Do we want to put parameters on it?
An example of that, the catfish truck, which is right outside of Miami-Dade's, when you walk out of the school, it's permanently there, but it doesn't disrupt the flow of the students walking through, and it's on the corner of a parking lot, not bothering anybody. So take for example, the public shopping center on US 1 and Campbell. You know, Pollo Tropical gets pretty backed up. Pretty backed up there. So if you had a food truck kind of in the middle of that parking lot, that'd be a place that I'd say, I don't think that's a good spot.
Right, the landlord would probably figure that out.
But we don't want them to just be able to put something there.
So when I'm thinking private property, right, they would not be able to, because there's a set number, some commercial businesses have excess parking that they don't use, right? And would be a perfect place to do like something like
the movie theater.
Something like this.
That's part of the park.
You have smaller commercial properties that are non-conforming, or properties that are already taxed and don't have enough parking, that couldn't support a food truck because it would impede the existing required parking, the circulation, the traffic circulation, or the fire, because fire has to get in and fire has to turn too. So some properties, even though they may be zoned for it, realistically, when you put the structure in place of where you can locate, they're not going to be able to.
Who's going to have discretion over?
We are. We're going to have to. We're going to have to say in the regulations, you have to be located in an area that does not obstruct, you know, and list out.
Sole discretion of the director, or his designee, is not obstructed.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just think, yeah, I mean, and they'll have to come in, they'll have to show proof of their license, and they'll have to, we'll have to have authorization from the property owner. I mean, this thing is not to make it complicated, it's just to at least start somewhere with a framework so that staff can answer questions and we have some direction for people who are wanting to come in and do food trucks, separate and apart from the city special events and the city events that we're doing on city property.
Yes, go ahead, please. Just your name and record.
I am a food truck owner. I live in the city of Homestead, and I went to see this driver today. I think you guys are doing a great job of brainstorming. I think you're complicating it a little too much. All we need is a yes, you can park on a commercial property. No, you can't. In case you guys don't know, when you park in a commercial property, you sign a lease with the commercial property, $1,100 a month. It's a going rate, and you're there as long as you pay your rent. The term, you know, it's decided with the owner and the food truck owner. Yes, being a new homeowner to the county or whatever you want to call it, I wasn't aware that I couldn't have food truck at my house. Residential property, I have to move it, I was fine. I was gonna park it behind my fence, thinking, okay, it's not in the front yard, it's my backyard, my house, I pay it, I can park whatever I want. Not the case. Figured that one out the hard way. Your idea about a food truck park, amazing, but you may better suit to have all those lots that aren't developed as commercial property, commercial parking for food trucks, for dump trucks, for semis, because there's nowhere to park in the county, in the city, anywhere. So basically, you know, I'd like to, the mixed use that you asked, I think we should be able to park there. Why? Because as a food truck owner, you want to be where the families are. The families that can walk down from their apartment or down the street, go get lunch, and go back out. They're tired, they're coming home from work, kids are hungry, I don't want to cook, let me go get, I make tacos, by the way, real good tacos. Let me go get tacos on Taco Tuesday.
No samples?
Oh, you know, Dade County has no restrictions. We can park in unincorporated days, but I want to park in City of Homestead. I want to go to, make Chrome the Wynwood or the nightlife that it needs, because yes, it closes at 8 p.m. and there's nothing to do. I don't want to drive to Kendall to go out, or downtown Miami, or whatever the case is. I want to go down the street after a movie, go, you know, get me good tacos after all that popcorn, or whatever the case is. Mixed use, parking at a mixed use zoning is optimal for me, business-wise, because all the families are there. And if you can have a convenience store on top of apartments, why not a mobile restaurant? Yes, leaving would be beneficial. The truck would leave. You have to go fill propane, you have to go to your commissary, fill your food, all that stuff. But if I'm paying $1,100 in rent a month, then I'm going to leave my truck there because I don't want my $500 fine from the county. So those are just my thoughts. If you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I will be chiming in because I am one of those that likes to give information.
You live within the city of Homestead as well?
I don't know if it's the city. I live on 293rd Street and between 144th and 147th. I just moved.
Oh, well, thank you.
I don't know who my contact person is.
The county commissioner.
So where do you operate now?
Right now, we have a pop-up at the Coral Reef Park off of 152nd Street and 77th Avenue, Saturdays, 9 to 3. So we have a local business tax with Palmetto Bay. We were also doing Taco Tuesdays at Exit 1 in Florida City. Not City of Homestead, easy city to do business in. You know, not against anybody here, but sometimes City of Homestead isn't easy to do business.
Why do you say it's easy in Florida City?
Because there isn't that many regulations. I didn't have to get a local business tax. I didn't have to do anything to park at that private property that I talked to the business owner personally, or whatever the case is, to set up there on Taco Tuesday.
So why aren't you still there?
They decided to change the rotation. I was there about 2 months, and they wanted to change the rotation. They have a food truck every day, and because they don't have a kitchen in their restaurant or their bars, they don't have a kitchen. So we would go every Tuesday, make our tacos, and keep it moving. But I had a pop-up. I would set up the tent. I would bring my grills, everything I needed. And they were okay with that. We're licensed and insured through the state. We have our liability insurance, everything. So it's just a matter of being able to provide our services to residents, really. Commercial property would be good. The mixed use would be good because you want to be where there's people. Not necessarily they have to get in their car, drive to downtown Chrome, or, you know, if I can be right in the mix, why not? And like you said, if the market, if I'm not selling, hey, I got to go. I got to move to another spot. But yes, staying there long period, I think that should be between me and the private property owner. The city shouldn't tell me what to do, what not to do, or them, actually, what to do, what not to do with their property.
In our downtown corridor, the downtown entertainment district, if we had a food truck park on one of the side parks, I wouldn't want to take up that space on Chrome Avenue to park a food truck, because we're used to parking for special events when we blocked off the road. But that has too much traffic and too little parking to have a food truck just on the side of the road, and it would protrude too much, onto Chrome Avenue. So I think, and for this pilot program, I'd like to, put this out all over the place, but when you work with government, I think you have to go in small, you have to take baby steps, so that everybody can see that it's working, and you get a lot of buy-in from people that were skeptical at the beginning, and then you've got some data that you can show and use as support. So I think starting with just the commercial portion of it is a good start, and hopefully we can, merge into
Other areas.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for, that needs to work.
Yeah.
I got bills to pay, I got people to feed.
Just to add to that her comments, I'm not suggesting that we get involved in the private lease agreement between the private property and a particular vendor. All I think we're concerned about as city staff is that if you're going to locate on a private piece of property, that it's situated and located in such a manner that it doesn't impede the existing parking requirements of the businesses there, that it doesn't impede pedestrian or traffic or vehicular circulation, those types of things. As long as it's an area that is available on the site plan that's been approved by you all, that would be the parameters to start with.
I'm okay with that, you guys, but I also did want to ask somebody, what are the requirements that we are going to ask of a food truck applicant?
So I think that it's going to be a very basic form, right? Under the existing statutory scheme, and it says, I was just reading it, we're preempted with respect to asking for any types of fees or permits or license or any type of that. I just see it as being a very basic sort of informational. You come in, you fill this out, you basically show proof in the case of your license from the state, that's your license, you're authorized to have a food truck. And if you're being located on private property, that you have a letter of consent or authorization from the private property owner that to be there, and that you have identified the area and you meet the minimum criteria with respect to locating there. And we're not going to get into how long they can stay or not stay.
No tax receipt, nothing to go through that department and
we can't.
inspected and.
We can't. That's all preempted to the state.
out.
Yeah. You would still come to zoning, so we could make sure, as James indicated, you're not impeding traffic circulation, ingress, egress. We have to check if it requires any type of proximity to a fire hydrant.
Oh, Jesus.
So I'm thinking about when a vendor becomes a vendor for the city. Could the trucks submit something similar where they become a vendor for the city? They could be at one of our city events, and then the property owner would be the one to come to the city to say, we're planning on having 3 trucks on our lot. Because if the food truck person comes with a letter from the owner, I don't know, I see it being easier for the landowner to come to the city and ask for 3 trucks to be able to be parked there.
Either way, we're gonna have to make sure that the food truck is properly licensed from the state, right? But being a vendor for the city requires that you have certain insurance requirements.
Well, I use that as an example. It doesn't have to be.
So we can set it up however you want. I was thinking that just to at least get started, just try not to make it so complicated, but just try to make it as easy as friendly as possible with the minimum review, because you can't charge for the application, but at least there's just, you come in and administratively look at it, get signed off, and then.
And even a link online, you know, there's the application with the two applications that you just described. It gets submitted to zoning, whoever is the appropriate person in zoning, and they get an email back saying, you know, you're approved. Knock yourself out.
So Delray requires an application fee, and it has, it requires you to provide proof of a.
But that was in 2016, prior to the existing legislation that was just approved, that preempts us from asking for all of
Oh,
it.
this is like null and void.
So some of that is,
Except the money part.
yeah.
Besides the application?
No,
Oh.
I wanted to really keep this specific to food trucks, not a hot dog vendor on the corner either, like you see in downtown. This was.
Outside the courthouse.
You mean like a food cart?
Right, like a food cart. I wanted to keep this specific to food trucks like she was talking about.
right.
We would have to follow the state definition for mobile
Food dispensing vehicles.
That's pretty clear there. I mean,
Is it here?
So it doesn't include road coaches
Yeah.
or hot dog carts.
It has to be self-sufficient.
I heard that in a while.
Business,
Coach,
refrigerator,
coaches.
full cooking on the vehicle.
They do.
The reason I'm thinking about going the city vendor route is because I would think that anybody interested in being part of one of these lots would want the opportunities to be at city events as well. So if that simplifies things,
I think it's two different, because we're not going to require as
we're not going to require them to be
private,
a vendor,
but
correct?
you're going to require a lot more when they're a vendor operating on your park property or at a city event, because this is going to require them to have a minimum amount of insurance.
So those minimum amount of insurances are not asked for by the county?
Well, that's between the property owner and between,
No, them getting their license, they need insurance.
they have to, that's all handled by the state. The state preempts all of that. We're not going to get involved, we can't get involved in any of that.
I understand.
Can we mirror this current state statute?
Do we require more than the state does?
We can.
No, for a
On
vendor.
your property, on
city property, yeah.
city property, you have the ability to dictate.
That's not her question, is do we currently require, is our current standard above, below, or at the same level as the current state statute?
Maybe we can find that out.
I probably has it that it's more strict.
Liability,
Requirement?
insurance requirement. I know they have with the health inspector, you have to do, of course, for food safety. That I know for sure, and then you get inspected once a year.
Yeah, that's all part of their state license. But, yeah, but with regards to your question, right now, your policy, I'm not sure what risk requires.
$100 minimum,
General liability?
right. And
so how many food truck vendors do we have on
We
the
did have
list?
an explosion on a food truck at one of our events.
Remember?
A propane tank went off.
To clarify, in each of these, didn't you retain a food truck coordinator, and he brought a fleet of food trucks down? It wasn't 7 different vendors. You contracted with someone who has.
And that was probably the best thing that we could have done, because they check and make sure that they have the insurances. They have to get, in order to be a part of their group, you have to get a background screening. You have to check their licenses, everything. And they're required to do that when they have events on county properties or parks. So county parks require licenses, background checks, all of that. And so this group does what they do, and so.
So that made your life a whole lot easier. You have one person to deal with.
Absolutely. And it made it so more comfortable because of the incident that we had at Homestead Live, and, and then also, the fire comes out before the event and inspect, make sure everything is good.
I don't know if we could do that on private property.
And I will say that the quality and caliber of that group of food trucks at Eats and Beats was far and away, head and shoulders above the typical Homestead event where you just have various people show up.
Oh, yeah.
Councilwoman Bailey, just to add, so in the instance where, I just use the example for discussion, like a food truck wanting to come on private property, let's just say in a Publix parking lot, and they meet all the requirements. Publix, or whoever the property owner is, they're going to require whatever insurance or indemnification from the food truck operator
That they feel comfortable.
with. We're not gonna get into that,
So James, if there's an irregular sized parcel that is commercial, not abutting a residential property, but it's not a half acre, do we then cut it in half and then say 2? Since we did 4 per half acre, would we then consider two for, 12,000 square feet?
Prorate down.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard to answer that in a vacuum because I don't know what that looks like from a site plan perspective, and staff can chime in, but, depending on the ingress, egress from where they're coming in off the road, depending on the parking area that's going to be needed, or if they're adjacent, or if they can park in some parking lot across the street, there's going to be some minimums that either is going to work or not going to work. I mean, some properties are going to be constrained and you're not going to be able to do it, and some properties are going to be big enough where you're going to be able to do it.
Right. I'd like to show you just an example so I can take this home with me and I have a good grasp of what we're talking about. And then, can you put, where the Kai's company Homestead is? In Flagler and Campbell? Sedano?
Across from old customer service.
Okay.
Put in the address of Old City Hall and just go right down. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I want to see the satellite view. Okay, so where is the customer service?
There's Kai's right there.
See, so where's the bus?
Right there,
Busway?
South Bay Busway.
Okay, so there's the bus comes through here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that one right there.
So there's a triangular shaped lot, right, this one, this guy. Oh, is that a triangle?
It's a rectangle.
Right, this guy right here. This particular parcel where people come off the bus. The rectangle with the sharp edge. Right. So if you were to click on that parcel, you just see it's a triangle shaped lot.
Click on it. Click it.
You have to go to the
Go back to the,
So that's an example, James. If that's like 12,000 square feet, and it can accommodate 2, does staff have discretion to make that decision? Or do we want to give them that discretion?
2675.
There's no power research staff. 675.
So,
Right there, that's the triangle.
This one?
Yeah. That's Campbell.
Oh, it is a triangle, you're right. It's like trapezoid. Am I right, Teacher Bailey?
but I thought, who said I thought it was you? Joe?
And it's also a cute. Not a 2,
It's on
The truck I've had is walk without being observed anyway.
Who owns that property? Alfredo Cruz. Does he want food trucks on his property?
I don't know, but this is the perfect,
The second last name is awful suspect.
Oh. That's a coincidence.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's like, what else can you do on that? You know, when did they buy that
you
property?
can build anything on there,
No, I know more about it.
but that's the type of irregular sized lots that I think work for food trucks.
Yeah, and I mean, whether that can support one or two with the seating area and with parking, I don't know. I mean, all we can do is just
How much square feet for them?
try it out and see.
No, go up a little bit more?
Now, nothing would prohibit, if it's commercial, nothing would prohibit him from putting a food truck there.
All right, well,
It says 17,000 square foot
that's what I
lot.
wanted to get at.
So, I mean, is that,
Half acre is how much?
I don't know if that's commercial property.
It says vacant land, commercial.
Well, you can't rely on the property appraiser because it's not correct all the time.
Oh, I
So we'll have to check it.
Michelle, that's one of the owners.
I remember this parcel.
And you had told them that parcel is not platted,
Correct.
and they're thinking about doing what's across the street, what Mr. Capiello did, because it's that irregular, weird, and I said, you're gonna have a hard time getting anything like that approved. So, in the meantime,
I'll be that management.
in the meantime, think about doing something else there, parking trucks, but you can't park trucks there. So, now I have a better understanding, if it's smaller, we could look at that.
Yeah, well, there's nothing to prohibit based on the framework we just discussed, right? Maybe you can't fit that many food trucks, but there's nothing to stop them from putting one on there. Now, as this plays out and we see, maybe we have to change the regs, maybe it can be two. I just don't know.
It may not be so much a function as the size of the parcel, but the configuration of the parcel.
All right.
So what are we doing?
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to take what we talked about today, and I'm gonna try to draft an ordinance. I'm gonna draft an ordinance based on that framework and bring it back to you all at a CAL meeting for discussion, and then we can move from there.
And we said 4 to a half acre,
Well,
more or less, like what were the
we're talking
ground?
about food trucks right now.
Yeah. Oh, what did I talk about?
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
4 to a half acre, and how many square feet is a half acre?
22,500.
Is a half acre?
More or less.
Okay, right, and so we'll prorate it, like, for example, this example would be maybe 2. Okay. And then what were the, so no blocking, egress,
So not adjacent to residential,
okay?
and then,
Existing residential, like built out, like,
yeah, like,
if it's
for
vacant land,
or
it's not residential.
it's zoned residential, because,
But if it's not built,
The county doesn't allow, like, for example, the county doesn't allow park in a residentially zoned district.
Okay.
so,
And for his request, we're focusing on the pilot program for commercial only, but we'll discuss in future and the success
please
expansion
get
to.
started with this, and I'll do the park,
Just want to make
and,
sure I understand we're
Yeah.
all in agreement with.
so I'm gonna do commercial, I'm gonna set some guidelines for a food park, and then also guidelines for just private property, for them to come in, and then we.
And when you say that, you mean like the public
Yeah.
parking lot exemption?
Yeah,
Got it.
like, and then put some regulations in place, and then put it in the context, you can see it, and then if you think something's too stringent, or you need something more, we can then talk about it a little bit more. But at least this is a good base for me to draft the framework, or start drafting the ordinance to give to you all to review.
And so this would basically allow a food truck vendor to have an understanding with the city because they wouldn't have a permit at the end of the day, they wouldn't have paid any fees or applications? Like that,
Right, but-
what do they have at the end of this process?
Yeah, we will give them like a food truck, I don't know, I'm just calling it like a food truck certificate or something.
Okay, that they passed inspection.
Yeah, that we reviewed it, we made sure that they were properly licensed.
Because I'm trying to think, like, what is code enforcement going to be looking for to
Right.
verify
We
that
can develop something.
there would still be some kind of
Yeah.
certificate
Yeah.
issued, business license type thing?
Not a business, we're not gonna call it a business.
Certificate.
We'll call
Type
it.
of piece of paper that.
Got it. Comitra stamp approved, then.
And then you all totally have the ability to do
Maybe next month. That's
whatever's working or not working for you all with regards to special events on city property or, you know,
If
co-sponsored
you're
events.
familiar with, it just came to me at Brandsmart, they used to have like a food truck event, I believe the first, this was during like COVID.
Yeah, I have not been back to Brandsmart.
It was,
Is it good? How, and would you say that that's like an acre?
yeah,
And how many food trucks?
it was about seven food trucks.
And they do it like after, like,
No.
they did it like in the middle of the day?
Mm-hmm. It was from 5, but Brandsmart was still open. It was from 5 until 10.
That's when the restaurants were shut down and you couldn't go inside, so the food trucks
No.
were popular? Because you said during COVID?
It was like a year, like
Okay.
just a
Was
year.
it a recurring?
Yes. Yes. It was very well received. People from everywhere.
Did you hear me?
Really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
It's funny, when I start speaking, everybody looks up at the ceiling. But anyways, I was doing some quick research while y'all were talking, and just some frame of references for sizes. The new Popeyes that's on Chrome Avenue sits on 20,000 square feet. The building is about 2,800 square feet. So the average food truck is probably about 300 square feet. Gives you some point of reference there. And then I'm not sure why, James, if you keep talking about we can't do a licensed business tax. I thought earlier that lady from was talking about the Palmetto Bay or Pinecrest or one of those charges her a licensed business tax to be on Coral Reef Park. Is that before or after the new legislation? Or did I just?
Councilman Ross, I don't know. I can't speak to that. I don't know when. I mean, if it's a park, it's probably city property, so that puts it in a different context. But under the existing statutory, most recent legislation that was approved, local governments are preempted from, the state preempts local governments from the permitting, inspection, BTRs, or any fees related to processing applications related to food trucks. I'm paraphrasing, but in broad context, that's what it says.
So I guess my question is then, if we allow them to operate a business and earn income on a property within the city limits, we have no way of knowing that they're there for the most part, unless code enforcement rides by and sees them there. But I'd be curious if she can answer that question, that is she required to have a business tax because it's county property, or because Coral Reef Park is either county or the city property. But it doesn't make sense that we couldn't identify a business, doing business in the city without having some kind of licensed business tax.
So it was part of a food truck, a green market, food market context on city property. You will know what's operating in the city. We're not going to require a BTR, but they're still going to have to come in and show proof that they are properly licensed within the state to operate a food truck, and they're going to have to abide by the parameters of the regulations that we're going to put into effect. So if someone comes in and doesn't do that, code enforcement can cite them.
But how are they going to know that they need to have that?
We coordinate with code enforcement.
We're going to side, put it on the website, coordinate with code enforcement.
So tell all the food truck friends.
Yeah.
They're dying to come here.
Who's driving?
Would a business owner in downtown that has some little paved area in the back be able to park a food truck back there and tell people come in and be serviced by the food truck?
It's zone commercial, according to what we're saying, yes, as long as it's not impeding traffic flow for the regular business.
Okay, and so there's no parking requirement?
It already exists for the business.
Yeah, so we would have to ensure that the business still has their minimum parking standards are compliant, and if they have excess parking, then that could be occupied by.
In that example, if there's a lot of properties are non-conforming downtown, they don't have parking on site, but to the extent in your example that there are 3 parking spaces in the back that are required for that building, then you would not be able to put a food truck on. Doesn't qualify as a place where you can put a food truck.
I think that parking lot behind Jacobson.
No, this is a real scenario. There is, on Mallory, the MAC building. They've asked if they park their food truck behind the MAC building and have the food truck there, serve food out of it.
We're trying to work with a nonprofit to provide their students part-time jobs, work experience, get our name out, serve our community within the.
And that's right across from our parking garage, no?
Yes.
So there's ample parking.
I think it would be behind the stage at Losner Park.
Yeah.
I think that's the spot.
Yeah, there's a concrete pad there.
So is there enough room there? Because I think we use that alley to pick up the roll-off containers.
The roll-off are they're locked.
Can we find it?
You want to put it up on the map of it?
Yeah, now it's on.
Oh. Here, there. That alley, a little further up, just, that's the vacant.
To the right of it, that right there.
That's the MAC.
So that paved area back there is behind.
Not their parking spot.
Right
Where
there.
the trees are, there's a slab.
Right there.
And that's not their property?
That's my problem.
Okay.
I mean, that's far enough in there, nobody even knows they're there, I don't see a problem with
So I think the solid waste trucks go back there.
That's what I'm thinking.
Pick up, solid waste pickup, and that might be a access issue.
So it's an easement? So that would be blocking any, so,
The solid waste truck, would go through the alley way. I think what they're proposing is on the private property.
right.
And for the service of roll-out containers, normally they're required to be rolled out. You know, we don't actually go onto their property.
So what is the property zone?
Commercial.
Is it? It's in the Southwest Neighborhood Master Plan.
No, it's north of Mallory.
North, okay.
You're the property appraiser. It's the second tab to the right. Go down. Zoom out. No, just zoom out.
So point to where?
No, you were out.
To the right, right there.
You're seeing the slabs under the tree?
Commercial.
Might be city property.
So, Commissioner,
Property line.
in one of those,
Within his fence line.
So does the garbage truck come in, what's gonna be that side entrance of
Yes.
Homestead Park and go up, go to
Yes.
the east?
Yes.
Right there, Gary.
Michelle has it.
No, that's a paper towel.
So the
Oh,
So the garbage trucks come through here.
Yeah.
There and to the right, yes.
Okay, so
That has nothing to do with,
So,
She's saying,
parking,
she's saying the slab is under the tree though, and that, unless the property appraiser lines are,
they're not always perfect, we need to see a survey.
but I think you have what, like 4 spaces or 6 parking spaces there?
Here, yeah.
They're gonna have to position their dumpster where we can get to it.
Well, then you also have that parking in and out, like how do people back out or pull in?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but
we can look at it.
one of those case by case.
I think we can look at it, but at least we have the framework to at least get started.
yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't be a problem that the property owner would find a solution to with the,
Yeah, unless it's on city property.
right, assuming it's
Yeah,
on on
right.
the private property, not on city property.
Anything else, guys? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.